Rain hammered against bulletproof glass as Elara Vale stood in the executive suite of Seoul's most feared man and did the one thing no one had ever dared to do. She told Kael Min she was leaving him, not as a lover, not as a partner, but as the woman who had spent 4 years keeping his empire from collapsing while he married someone else. His dark eyes lifted from the resignation letter, and for the first time in her life she saw something in them that made her blood run cold. Not anger, not indifference, but the quiet, deadly certainty of a man who had just realized he would burn the world down before he let her walk away. If you want to see how far a dangerous man will go when he loses the only person who ever made him feel human, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The resignation letter hit the black marble desk with a sound softer than Elara's heartbeat, but louder than the thunder rolling across Seoul's skyline. She had rehearsed this moment for 3 weeks, practiced her tone, perfected her posture, built walls around every emotion that might crack through. None of it mattered now. Kael Min didn't move, didn't blink. His hands remained flat against the desk, fingers spread like he was bracing against an earthquake only he could feel. The rain outside the floor-to-ceiling windows turned the city into a blur of neon and shadow. But inside this office, the nerve center of an empire built on blood money and corporate warfare, everything had gone dangerously still. "What is this?" His voice came out quiet. Too quiet. Elara forced herself to meet his eyes. "It's a resignation. Effective in 2 weeks." "I can read." Kael leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath him. "I'm asking what the hell you think you're doing." "Leaving." "Why?" "Because watching you marry Serafina Cho is going to kill me. Because I've spent 4 years pretending I don't feel anything while you built a life I'll never be part of. Because I'm 28 years old and I've given you everything except the one thing that would destroy us both." "Personal reasons," Elara said instead. Kael's jaw tightened. For a man who controlled half of Seoul's underground economy and a disturbing percentage of its legitimate corporations, he looked genuinely thrown. Like someone had just rewritten the rules of a game he'd been winning for years. "Personal reasons," he repeated slowly. "You've worked 80-hour weeks for 4 years. You've negotiated with politicians who wanted me dead. You've stood in rooms where one wrong word would have gotten you killed. You've seen things that would send most people into therapy for life. And now you're leaving for personal reasons?" "Yes." "Try again." Elara's hands curled into fists at her sides. This was exactly why she needed to leave. Kael Min didn't know how to let anything go. Not territory, not power, not people who had proven themselves useful, especially not people who had become something else entirely without either of them meaning for it to happen. "I don't owe you an explanation," she said carefully. "I followed every protocol, given proper notice, documented all my projects. I'll spend the next 2 weeks training my replacement." "There is no replacement." Kael stood, and even though he didn't raise his voice, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Do you understand that? There's no one else who knows this operation the way you do. No one else I trust to handle the things you handle." "Then you should have thought about that before—" Elara cut herself off. Kael's eyes narrowed. "Before what?" "Before you got engaged, before you chose a merger over a person, before you made it crystal clear that I'm valuable but not irreplaceable in the ways that actually matter." "Nothing," Elara said. "It doesn't matter. Everything about this matters." Kael walked around the desk, closing the distance between them with the predatory grace of a man who had learned young that showing weakness meant dying. "You don't just walk away from this. You know too much. You've seen too much." A cold thread of fear wound through Elara's chest. "Are you threatening me?" Something flickered across Kael's face. Surprise, maybe, or hurt, though she'd never seen him hurt before. "Jesus, Elara, no. I'm trying to understand why the most competent person I've ever worked with is suddenly acting like—" "Like what?" she challenged. "Like someone with a life outside this building? Like someone who might want something that doesn't involve cleaning up your messes?" "My messes kept you employed." "Your messes kept me alive," Elara shot back. "There's a difference." They stood 3 feet apart, breathing hard like they'd just run a marathon instead of having a conversation. Outside, lightning split the sky, throwing Kael's face into sharp relief. He looked older than 32 in that moment, tired, almost vulnerable. Almost. If this is about money, he started, it's not about money. Then what? Tell me what I did wrong so I can fix it. Elara almost laughed. Almost. Because Kael Min had built an empire on fixing problems, eliminating obstacles, turning every disadvantage into leverage. Of course, he thought this was something he could solve with the right strategy. You didn't do anything wrong, she said quietly. That's the problem. Kael stared at her like she'd started speaking a language he didn't understand. That doesn't make sense. I know. Elara, I'm leaving, Kael. You can accept it or not, but I'm done. She turned toward the door before she could change her mind, before the expression on his face, confused, almost desperate, could carve out another piece of her heart. You walk out that door, we're not done, Kael said behind her. We're never done. Elara's hand froze on the doorknob. She didn't turn around, didn't trust herself to look at him again. 2 weeks, she said. That's all I'm giving you. Then she left before he could see her hands shaking. Bam. The next morning arrived with all the subtlety of a car crash. Elara walked into her office, the smaller suite adjacent to Kael's, connected by a door she kept locked more for psychological comfort than security, to find 36 white orchids covering every available surface. They'd been arranged with surgical precision, stems exactly the same height, petals absolutely perfect. She hated white orchids. More accurately, she hated that Kael knew she loved them, but refused to keep them in her apartment because they reminded her too much of funeral homes and false sympathy. The note was handwritten on heavy cardstock. Kael's writing, angular and controlled. Reconsider. K. Elara crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then she spent 15 minutes calling the building's florist to arrange donation of all 36 plants to the hospital 3 blocks away. If Kael wanted to wage psychological warfare with expensive flowers, she'd turn it into something useful. Her assistant, a nervous 23-year-old named Mina, who treated Elara like some kind of corporate legend, knocked softly before entering. Ms. Vale, Mr. Min wants to see you. Tell him I'm busy. He said it wasn't a request. Elara looked up from her laptop. Mina had gone pale, which meant Kael had used that voice, the one that made grown men with military training reconsider their life choices. It's fine, Elara said, gentler. I'll handle it. She found Kael in this private conference room at the end of the executive floor. The space was designed for meetings that couldn't be recorded, with signal jammers built into the walls and acoustic dampening that made every word feel like a secret. Kael stood at the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city he'd spent 10 years conquering. He'd built his first business at 22, a legitimate import company that happened to move a lot of other things beneath the legal paperwork. By 25, he'd merged it with 3 competitors and attracted the attention of Seoul's most powerful crime families. The wrong kind of attention, usually. But Kael had turned every threat into an alliance, and every alliance into leverage. Now, at 32, he controlled a network of businesses, politicians, and back-channel operators that made him functionally untouchable. Elara had been there for most of it, watching him evolve from a dangerous young entrepreneur into something closer to a king. You donated my flowers, Kael said without turning around. They were my flowers once you gave them to me. You hate white orchids. I love them, Elara corrected. That's why I don't keep them around. Kael finally turned. He had ditched the suit jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves. It was a small thing, nothing compared to the carefully constructed armor he usually wore, but it felt deliberate, like he was trying to strip away the corporate facade. We need to talk about last night, he said. Nothing to talk about. I resigned. You have 2 weeks to find a replacement. We move on. Do we? Elara crossed her arms. What do you want me to say, Kael? I want you to tell me the truth. Why are you really leaving? I did. Bullshit. He took a step closer. I've watched you negotiate with arms dealers who'd kill their own mothers for the right price. I've seen you stare down prosecutors trying to build a case they'll never win. You don't flinch. You don't panic. But last night, standing in my office, you looked like you were running from something. Maybe I am. From what? From you? From this? From the fact that I've spent 4 years falling in love with someone who sees me as a particularly effective tool. It doesn't matter, Elara said. It's the only thing that matters. Lightning flashed outside, throwing shadows across Kael's face. For just a second, he looked less like a CEO and more like the street kid from Busan, who'd fought his way into power one brutal decision at a time. I'm getting married in 3 months, Kael said quietly. You know that. Elara's nails bit into her palms. I'm aware. Serafina's family controls half the shipping infrastructure in East Asia. Her father owns senators. The marriage creates a network that makes us untouchable. Congratulations. It's not... Kael stopped, started again. This isn't personal. It's strategic. I know. Do you? He moved closer, close enough that Elara could smell his cologne. Something expensive and understated that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Because you're acting like this is personal. You're right, Elara said, meeting his eyes. It's not personal. It's business. I'm a professional making a professional decision to pursue other opportunities. What opportunities? Does it matter? Yes. Why? Kael opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time since Elara had met him, he looked genuinely lost. Because you matter, he said finally, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. Elara's heart did something complicated and painful in her chest. As what? Your assistant? Your fixer? Your secret weapon for cleaning up problems you can't solve with money or threats? As you. The words hung between them like a live grenade. Elara forced herself to step back, to put distance between them before she did something catastrophically stupid. I need to get back to work. Lots to do before I leave. Elara, 2 weeks, Kael. That's what I'm giving you. Don't make it harder than it has to be. She left before he could answer, before she could see whether the look on his face was relief or something infinitely more dangerous. The charity gala came faster than Elara expected. She'd forgotten it was on the calendar, one of those glittering corporate events where Seoul's elite gathered to pretend they cared about causes while really networking and measuring power. Normally, Elara would have managed Kael's schedule, prepped his talking points, and stayed in the background making sure everything ran smoothly. This time, she'd planned to skip it entirely. Kael had other ideas. You're going, he said 3 days before the event, dropping an invitation on her desk. Elara didn't look up from her laptop. I don't work for you anymore. You work for me for another week and a half, and I need you there. Get Mina to do it. Mina's 23 and she cries when people raise their voices. This event has politicians, corporate raiders, and at least 4 people who've tried to have me killed. I need someone competent. Flattery won't work. I'm not flattering you, I'm stating facts. Kael dropped into the chair across from her desk, making himself comfortable in the way that always made her staff nervous. Besides, Serafina will be there. Don't you want to see what you're walking away from? That made Elara look up. Excuse me? I'm kidding. But his eyes weren't kidding. They were watching her with that particular intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through every defense she'd built. Mostly, I'm not going. Yes, you are. Kael? Elara. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm asking, properly. Please come to the gala. One last event. Then you can leave and never speak to me again if that's what you want. It was the please that got her. Kael Min didn't say please, didn't ask for things when he could simply take them or trade for them. Fine, Elara said against her better judgment, but I'm leaving after 2 hours. Deal. She should have known better, should have recognized the gleam in his eyes as a warning sign. But such as tits. The gala was held at the Shilla Hotel's grand ballroom, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors, and the kind of ostentatious wealth that made Elara's skin crawl. She'd grown up middle class in a neighborhood where people worked 3 jobs and still struggled to make rent. Events like this always felt like performance art designed to remind everyone that class divisions weren't just real, they were insurmountable. Elara wore her standard uniform for these things. A sleek black dress that cost less than a quarter of what most women here spent on shoes, paired with her favorite combat boots, because she refused to sacrifice mobility for aesthetics. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple twist, no jewelry except small silver studs in her ears. She looked exactly like what she was, staff trying to blend into the background, which made it deeply, profoundly weird when Kael arrived with her instead of Serafina. Elara realized something was wrong the moment they walked through the entrance together. Cameras flashed, heads turned, conversations died mid-sentence. "What are you doing?" she hissed under her breath. Kael's hand settled on her lower back, not possessive, just present, as he guided her toward the main ballroom. "Walking into a party. With me. Is that a problem?" "Where's Serafina?" "Delayed, she'll be here later." But the way he said it, casual, unconcerned, made Elara's stomach tighten with something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Stop it," she told herself firmly. "This doesn't mean anything. He's just being practical." The ballroom was packed with Seoul's power players. Elara recognized at least a dozen politicians she'd helped Kael negotiate with over the years. 3 CEOs whose companies had mysteriously merged with Kael's holdings after their attempts at hostile resistance. A handful of international investors who probably didn't know they were sitting 3 feet away from the men who controlled their supply chains. And watching all of it with cool calculation, Serafina Cho. She stood near the bar in a white designer gown that probably cost 6 figures, surrounded by a careful circle of admirers who laughed at her observations and competed for her attention. She was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful. Polished, perfect, absolutely untouchable. Her eyes locked on Kael and Elara. Something flickered across her face. Not anger, something colder, more controlled. "I should go," Elara said. Kael's hand didn't move from her back. "Stay." "Kael, I want you here." Before Elara could process that, before she could unpack the weight in those 4 words, someone called Kael's name from across the room. A finance minister who'd been instrumental in pushing through legislation that benefited Kael's shipping operations. The kind of man who smiled while calculating how to destroy you. Kael excused himself, leaving Elara alone near one of the champagne fountains. She lasted exactly 4 minutes before Adrian Cross found her. "Well," Adrian said, sliding up beside her with a grin that probably worked on most women, "if it isn't the most interesting person at this tedious affair." Elara had met Adrian twice before. He ran a venture capital firm that specialized in tech startups and had a reputation for being charming, ruthless, and far too smart for anyone's comfort. He was also one of the few people in Seoul's elite circles who didn't seem afraid of Kael. "Mr. Cross," Elara said neutrally, "please. Adrian, we're at a party pretending to care about childhood literacy. Formality seems excessive." He gestured at the crowd with his champagne glass. "Tell me something. Are you here working or actually enjoying yourself?" "Do I look like I'm enjoying myself?" "You look like you'd rather be literally anywhere else." "Perceptive." Adrian laughed. "I like you. You're the only person here who doesn't pretend this isn't all an elaborate game of measuring who has the biggest influence. Maybe I'm just better at pretending." "Maybe. But I doubt it." He tilted his head, studying her. "You're Kael Min's executive assistant, right? The woman who actually runs his empire while he plays kingmaker?" "I handle administrative tasks." "You're terrifying half the people in this room just by standing here. That's not administrative." Adrian's smile turned thoughtful. "I'm opening a new venture fund, focused on startups led by people from non-traditional backgrounds. I could use someone with your skill set, someone who understands power dynamics and isn't afraid to operate in morally ambiguous spaces." Elara blinked. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. Better pay than whatever Min gives you. Actual equity. And you wouldn't have to spend your days managing a man who thinks he's untouchable." It was a good offer. A smart offer. It was also impossibly dangerous because accepting it would mean staying in Seoul, staying in Kael's orbit, staying close enough to watch him build a life with someone else. "I'll think about it," Elara said carefully. "Fair enough." Adrian pulled out a business card. "My personal number. Call me if you want to discuss." "What's going on here?" Kael's voice cut through the ambient noise of the gala like a blade. He'd appeared beside them without warning, his expression perfectly neutral except for his eyes. His eyes looked ready to start a war. "Just having a conversation," Adrian said easily. "Wasn't aware that required permission." "It does when you're hitting on my assistant." "Your soon-to-be former assistant," Adrian corrected. "From what I hear, Ms. Vale is available for new opportunities." Kael's jaw tightened. "She's not." "That's not really your decision to make." The air pressure in the immediate area seemed to drop. Elara watched several people nearby subtly move away, sensing the tension the way animals sense an approaching storm. Adrian, Elara said carefully, thank you for the offer. I'll be in touch. She grabbed Kael's arm and steered him toward the balcony before he could do something that would make headlines. Behind them, Adrian's laughter followed, knowing, amused, absolutely unafraid. The balcony was mercifully empty. Rain had stopped, leaving the city spread out below them like a constellation of artificial stars. What the hell was that? Elara demanded. He was making a move on you. He was offering me a job. Same thing. How is that possibly the same thing? Kael turned to face her, and the look on his face made Elara's breath catch. Gone was the controlled corporate mask. This was raw, unfiltered, dangerous. Because he wasn't looking at you like a potential employee, Kael said quietly. He was looking at you like something he wanted to own. And that's different from how you look at me. The words came out before Elara could stop them. For a moment, Kael just stared at her like she'd physically struck him. Yes, he said finally. It is. How? Because I actually see you. Elara's heart was beating too fast. This was spiraling, getting away from her. Kael, Adrian Cross is a predator, successful, charming, but fundamentally a predator. He sees something useful, and he takes it. That's all you'd ever be to him. And what am I to you? The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Kael stepped closer, close enough that Elara had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, close enough that she could see the muscle ticking in his jaw, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. You want honesty? He asked. I want you to stop playing games. I'm not playing anything. His voice dropped lower. You're the only person in my life who was never impressed by money or power. You argued with me, challenged me, made me work for every ounce of respect. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How dangerous it is to find someone who treats you like a person instead of a resource? So I'm useful. You're essential. The word came out harsh, almost angry. And not because of what you do, because of who you are. Because for 4 years, you've been the only real thing in my life. Elara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. You're getting married. I know. To someone else. I know. Then this, whatever this is, doesn't matter. Doesn't it? Kael raised one hand like he was going to touch her face, then stopped himself. If it doesn't matter, why are you leaving? Because staying would destroy me. Because watching you love someone else while pretending I'm fine would kill me slowly. Because I can't be your assistant and your secret and your almost anymore. Because I need to, Elara said instead. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. They stood there on the balcony, the city spread out below them, neither willing to move first. Behind them, through the glass doors, the gala continued. Politicians trading favors, corporations measuring leverage, Seoul's elite playing the same games they'd been playing for centuries. And in the middle of it all, Kael Min looked at Elara Vale like she was the only person in the entire world who mattered. It would have been romantic if it wasn't so completely, utterly devastating. 2 more days, Elara said quietly. Then I'm gone. Find a way to make peace with that. She walked back inside before he could answer. Before she could see the expression on his face that looked less like acceptance and more like a declaration of war. Elara made it exactly 18 hours before everything exploded. She'd gone back to her apartment after the gala, stripped off the black dress, and spent 3 hours staring at her ceiling trying to convince herself that leaving was still the right choice. That Kael's words on the balcony, "You're essential," didn't change the fundamental reality that he was marrying someone else in 3 months. By morning, she'd almost succeeded in believing it. Then her phone rang at 6:15 a.m. with a number she didn't recognize. Miss Vale? The voice was female, crisp, professional. This is Hanji Wu from the prosecutor's office. We need to speak with you regarding your employment with Kael Min. Elara sat up so fast her vision blurred. I'm sorry, what? There's an ongoing investigation. We'd appreciate your cooperation. Can you come to our offices this morning? Every instinct Elara had honed over 4 years screamed danger. Am I being charged with something? Not at this time. We simply have questions. Then I'll need to consult with legal counsel before... Of course, we'll expect you at 10. The prosecutor hung up before Elara could respond. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone still pressed to her ear, trying to breathe through the panic clawing up her throat. An investigation. They had questions about her employment, which meant they were building a case against Kael and thought she might be leverage, or a witness, or both. Elara pulled up Kael's number, hesitated, put the phone down. If the prosecutors were circling, the last thing she should do was call the target. Every conversation would be monitored, every interaction documented. She'd watched Kael navigate these situations before. Prosecutors trying to build cases with circumstantial evidence, political rivals using law enforcement as weapons, investigations that went nowhere because the evidence mysteriously disappeared. But she'd never been the one caught in the crossfire. Elara grabbed her laptop and started documenting everything she could remember, every meeting, every decision, every conversation that might be twisted into something criminal. If they were coming after Kael through her, she needed to be prepared. She made it through 2 hours of frantic note-taking before someone knocked on her apartment door. Elara froze. She lived in a secure building. No one got past the front desk without being announced. She moved to the door carefully, checking the peephole. Kael stood in her hallway looking like he'd been awake for days. "Open the door, Elara." She did, because refusing would only make things worse. "How did you get up here?" "I own the building." Kael walked past her into the small living room, looking around like he was cataloging escape routes. "The prosecutor called you." It wasn't a question. "How do you know that?" "Because they called 6 other people this morning, all connected to my operations, all suddenly very interested in cooperating." Kael turned to face her. "They're trying to flip someone, build a case from the inside." "I didn't tell them anything. I haven't even—" "I know." He said it with absolute certainty. "You wouldn't, but they don't know that, which makes you a target." Elara's hands were shaking. She shoved them in her pockets. "What do they think they have?" "Financial records, emails, meeting logs." Kael's expression was grim. "Someone inside leaked documents. They're trying to prove racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. The usual." "Can they?" "Not if everyone stays quiet." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Elara had spent 4 years watching Kael manage investigations. She knew exactly how he kept people quiet. Money, threats, leverage, whatever worked. "I'm not wearing a wire," she said. "I didn't think you were." "Then why are you here?" Kael moved closer, and Elara saw the exhaustion in his face now, the tight control barely holding together. "Because if they push hard enough, if they threaten you with charges or make promises about immunity, I need to know you won't break." "You're asking if I'll protect you." "I'm asking if I can trust you." The words hit like a physical blow. After 4 years, after everything, he still didn't know. "Get out," Elara said quietly. Kael didn't move. "Elara, ok. I said get out. You want to know if you can trust me? After I've spent 4 years keeping your empire running? After I've lied to prosecutors and politicians and rivals because you needed me to? After I've put myself in danger more times than I can count?" Her voice was rising now, control slipping. "You don't get to walk into my home and question my loyalty. Not now, not ever. That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Kael's jaw worked. "I meant that if they come after you, if they threaten you with prison time or try to destroy your life to get to me, I need to know you understand that I will do everything in my power to protect you. But only if you let me." Elara stared at him. "What?" "You think I'm here to make sure you stay quiet." Kael's voice had gone rough. "I'm here to make sure you're safe. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." He took another step closer. Close enough that Elara could see the muscle jumping in his jaw, the way his hands had curled into fists. "I have lawyers on retainer who specialize in making prosecution cases disappear. I have enough leverage on half the prosecutor's office to bury this investigation before it goes anywhere. But none of that matters if they've already decided you're their weak point. I'm not weak. I know you're not. But they'll try to make you feel weak. They'll isolate you, threaten you, promise you safety if you cooperate. And if you're facing that alone—" "I'm always alone," Elara interrupted. "That's the job. That's what you hired me for. To be competent and self-sufficient and never need help." "I was wrong." The admission came out stark, unadorned. Elara's breath caught. "What?" "I was wrong. Kael repeated. About a lot of things, but especially about that. He ran a hand through his hair, destroying the careful style. You want to know why I don't want you to leave? It's not because you're useful. It's because somewhere in the last 4 years, you became the only person I give a damn about. And the thought of you facing a prosecutor's office alone while I sit in my tower pretending everything's fine makes me want to burn the entire justice system to the ground. Elara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. You're getting married. Serafina and I have an arrangement. An arrangement. A business merger. That's all it's ever been. Does she know that? Something flickered across Kael's face. She knows what she needs to know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Kael closed the distance between them, and Elara found herself backing up until she hit the wall. But you want honesty. Here it is. I'm marrying Serafina because it expands my influence into territories I can't access alone. Because it creates alliances that make me untouchable. Because it's smart strategy. How romantic. There's nothing romantic about it, that's the point. His voice dropped lower. Serafina and I understand each other. We both want power. We both know how to get it. There's no pretense, no emotional manipulation, no risk. No love. No love, Kael agreed. Which is exactly how I want it. Then what am I? The question came out smaller than Elara intended. Vulnerable. She hated it. Kael looked at her like she'd just asked him to explain quantum physics. You're the risk I can't calculate, the variable that destroys every careful plan I make. You're chaos and danger and everything I should stay away from. Sounds terrible. It is. His hand came up to the wall beside her head, bracketing her in. Not touching, just present. It's also the only thing in my life that feels real. Elara's heart was doing something complicated and painful. Kael? Her phone rang. They both looked at it on the coffee table. Unknown number again. Don't answer, Kael said. Elara pushed past him and grabbed the phone. Hello? Ms. Vale, this is Prosecutor Hahn again. I'm calling to inform you that we've moved your interview to this afternoon, 2 p.m. It's no longer optional. I haven't agreed to... You can come voluntarily or we can issue a subpoena. Your choice. The line went dead. Elara set the phone down carefully. They're pushing. I know. Kael was already pulling out his own phone. I'm calling my lawyers. They'll meet you at the prosecutor's office. Don't say anything without counsel present. Kael, promise me. He looked up, and the desperation in his eyes made her chest ache. Promise me you won't try to handle this alone. I promise. He made 3 calls in rapid succession, his voice shifting into the cold, authoritative tone he used when making deals that could ruin lives. By the time he hung up, he'd assembled a legal team, arranged for security, and apparently threatened at least one government official with unspecified consequences. You're meeting my lead attorney at 1:30, Kael said. Her name is Park Sun-mi, former prosecutor. She knows every trick they'll try. Okay, Elara. He caught her hand before she could move away. If they offer you immunity in exchange for testimony, I won't take it. You should. That made her look up. What? If they're offering immunity, it means they think they can charge you with something, which means they have evidence, real or manufactured, that puts you at risk. Kael's grip tightened. If they offer you a deal, take it. Don't protect me at the cost of your freedom. You just spent 10 minutes telling me you'd burn down the justice system to keep me safe. And I meant it. But I'd rather you be safe and hating me than in prison because you were loyal to someone who didn't deserve it. Elara pulled her hand free. You're an idiot. Probably. I'm not testifying against you. I'm not taking immunity. I'm not cooperating. She met his eyes. Because despite everything, despite the engagement and the empire and all the reasons this is a disaster, I trust you. So you're going to have to trust me too. Kael looked at her like she'd just offered him something impossibly valuable. Okay? Okay? I trust you. He said it simply, like it was the easiest thing in the world. Now, let me help you. The prosecutor's office was located in a brutalist concrete building that looked designed to crush hope. Elara arrived at 1:30 to find Park Sun-mi waiting in the lobby, a woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and a perfectly tailored suit that screamed competence. Ms. Vale. Sunmi extended a hand. I've been briefed on your situation. Here's what you need to know. They're fishing. They don't have a case yet. They're hoping you'll give them one. I won't. Good. But they'll try to make you angry, scared, defensive. Don't react. Don't explain. Don't justify. Sunmi's expression was all business. Answer only direct questions. Give minimal information. Let me handle everything else. They were escorted to an interview room that smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Prosecutor Han was already there with a colleague, a man in his 50s who looked like he'd spent his career putting people behind bars and enjoying every minute. Ms. Vale, Han said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank you for coming. I didn't have a choice. Let's begin. Han opened a folder thick with documents. You've worked for Kael Min for 4 years. In what capacity? Executive assistant. And what does that entail? Administrative duties, scheduling, communications. Communications with whom? Sunmi cut in smoothly. That's privileged information related to business operations. Han's smile tightened. Ms. Vale, we have records showing you participated in meetings with known criminals. You've transferred funds between accounts we suspect are used for money laundering. You've arranged meetings that resulted in violent confrontations. I don't know what you're talking about, Elara said. No? Han pulled out a photo. Surveillance footage of Elara leaving a restaurant with a man Elara recognized as one of Kael's suppliers. Legal supplier, technically, but everyone knew what else he moved. This is you with Park Jun-seok. 3 weeks ago, you discussed a shipment coming through Busan port. I discussed legitimate business operations. We have testimony suggesting otherwise. Then your testimony is wrong, Sunmi said flatly. Do you have evidence of criminal activity, or are we wasting time? The older prosecutor leaned forward. Ms. Vale, we know you're not the criminal here. You're an employee following orders. If you cooperate, tell us what you know about Min's operations. We can offer protection. Immunity from prosecution. A fresh start. She's not interested, Sunmi said. Let her answer. Elara met Han's eyes. I don't need immunity from crimes I didn't commit, and I don't have information about criminal operations because I don't work in criminal operations. You're lying. I'm telling the truth. We can make this very difficult for you. You're already making it difficult. Elara kept her voice level. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, charge me. If you don't, stop wasting my time. Han's expression hardened. You're protecting a dangerous man. I'm protecting my integrity. There's a difference. The interview went on for 2 more hours. They showed her emails taken out of context, financial records that looked suspicious if you didn't know the legitimate business behind them, testimony from people Elara had never met, claiming she'd been involved in operations she'd never heard of. Through it all, Sunmi deflected and Elara stayed quiet. By the time they left, Elara felt like she'd been through a war. You did well, Sunmi said in the elevator. They have nothing concrete. They're trying to build a narrative from circumstantial evidence. Will it work? Not if everyone stays consistent. Sunmi handed her a business card. Call me if they contact you again. Don't speak to them without me present. Elara took the card with numb fingers. Thank you. Outside, the sun was setting over Seoul. Elara stood on the courthouse steps trying to remember how to breathe normally. Her phone buzzed. Kael, how did it go? Elara. Fine, no charges. Kael, where are you? Elara. Going home. Kael. Don't come to my place. Elara stared at the message. Going to Kael's penthouse felt dangerous for reasons that had nothing to do with prosecutors. Elara. I should go home. Kael, please, that word again. The one he never used. Elara found herself hailing a cab before she could talk herself out of it. Kael's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Gangnam. Elara had been there exactly twice in 4 years, both times to deliver documents that couldn't wait until morning. She'd never stayed, never let herself get comfortable in a space that felt more like a museum than a home. Kael answered the door himself, no security in sight. He'd changed out of his suit into dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look younger. Less like a corporate kingpin and more like the street kid from Busan who'd fought his way into power. You okay? He asked. Elara walked past him into the massive living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Define okay. Not falling apart. Then yes, I'm okay. Kael moved to the bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if she wanted one. He handed her a glass and they stood there in silence, looking out at Seoul's glittering skyline. Sunmi said you did well, Kael said finally. She told you? I pay her to tell me everything. Of course you do. Kael's mouth twitched, almost a smile. They're going to keep pushing, trying to find cracks, someone who'll break. I won't. I know. He took a drink. But there are 6 other people they're pressuring. One of them might. Then what? Then I handle it. Elara turned to look at him. How? However I have to. The casual way he said it, like violence and intimidation were just tools in a kit, should have scared her. Maybe once it would have, but she'd spent 4 years watching Kael navigate a world where power was the only currency that mattered. She knew who he was, what he was capable of. It didn't change how she felt about him, which was probably the most dangerous thing of all. I'm still leaving, Elara said quietly. Even after today. Even after all this. Kael set his glass down. Why? Because being near you makes it impossible to think straight. Good. That's not good, Kael. That's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. He turned to face her fully. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't spent 4 years trying to keep distance between us because mixing business with anything else would be catastrophically stupid? Then why stop now? Because I'm tired. The admission came out raw. I'm tired of pretending I don't notice when you walk into a room. Tired of finding excuses to keep you late at the office. Tired of watching other men look at you and wanting to break their faces for it. Elara's heart was hammering. You're engaged to someone I don't love. Does she know that? Serafina knows exactly what our arrangement is. Are you sure? Elara challenged. Because at the gala she looked at you like what? Like she expects you to actually be her husband, not just her business partner. Kael was quiet for a long moment. Serafina wants power, same as me. That's what holds us together. And when she wants more, she won't. Everyone wants more, eventually. Not Serafina. Kael moved closer. She's been burned before, by men who promised love and delivered betrayal. She doesn't make that mistake anymore. What we have is clean, transactional, safe. Nothing about you is safe. No, Kael agreed. But Serafina doesn't need safe. She needs useful. And that's what I am to her. Elara wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways that logic was flawed. But she'd seen Serafina at the gala, calculating, controlled, watching Kael and Elara with cool assessment rather than jealousy. Maybe he was right. Or maybe he was deluding himself. This is a mistake, Elara said, but she didn't move away when Kael stepped closer. Probably. We can't. I know. Kael, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was 4 years of carefully controlled tension finally breaking, all the things they'd never said crashing together in a single moment of absolute recklessness. Elara's glass hit the floor. She heard it shatter distantly, unimportant compared to the feeling of Kael's hands in her hair, his body pressed against hers, the way he kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. She kissed him back just as desperately, fingers curling into his sweater, 4 years of denial burning away in seconds. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he said, not as my assistant, not as anything except you. Just stay. Elara's hands were shaking. I can't. Why not? Because this is temporary. You'll marry Serafina, build your empire, and I'll be the complication you regret. That's not... Yes, it is. She forced herself to step back, to put space between them, before she did something even more catastrophically stupid. You want me now because I'm leaving. Because for the first time you can't have something you want. But once that changes, once I'm not walking away anymore, you'll remember why you kept distance for 4 years. You're wrong. Am I? Elara grabbed her bag from where she'd dropped it. Tell me something, Kael. If I actually stayed, what would that look like? Would I still work for you, live separately and pretend we're professional? Would you keep me hidden like some dirty secret while you build a life with Serafina? I don't have all the answers. That's my point. You want me to stay, but you haven't thought past the wanting, and I can't build my life on something that undefined. Kael looked like she'd hit him. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me what this actually is, not what it might be, not what you think it could become. Right now, today, what am I to you? The question hung between them. Kael opened his mouth, closed it, and in that silence, Elara found her answer. That's what I thought, she said quietly. She made it to the elevator before he called her name. Elara. She didn't turn around. You're the only person who makes me want to be something other than what I am, Kael said. That's what you are to me, and it terrifies me. Elara's hand hovered over the elevator button. Why? Because wanting to be better and actually being better are two different things, and I don't know if I'm capable of the second one. Then we're both terrified. She pressed the button. Because I don't know if I'm capable of loving someone like you without losing myself completely. The elevator doors opened. Elara stepped inside. 2 more days, she said as the doors started to close. Then I'm gone. She saw Kael's expression, devastated, angry, desperate, before the doors cut him off completely. The elevator descended in silence. Elara made it exactly 30 seconds before she started crying. Bits. The next morning, Serafina Cho walked into Elara's office unannounced. Elara looked up from her laptop to find Seoul's most elegant heiress standing in her doorway wearing a white dress that probably cost more than Elara's entire wardrobe. Her expression was pleasant, controlled, absolutely terrifying. Ms. Vale, Serafina said, do you have a moment? I'm fairly busy. It wasn't really a question. Serafina closed the door behind her and took the chair across from Elara's desk with the grace of someone who'd been trained from birth to command rooms. Up close, she was even more striking. Perfect bone structure, dark eyes that missed nothing, the kind of poise that came from generations of wealth and power. What can I do for you? Elara asked carefully. You can stop sleeping with my fiancé. The words dropped like a grenade. Elara's expression didn't change. Years of working with Kael had taught her how to keep her face neutral, even when her heart was trying to claw out of her chest. I don't know what you're talking about. Please don't insult my intelligence. Serafina crossed her legs, perfectly composed. I saw how he looked at you at the gala. I've heard the rumors, and Kael came home at 2 a.m. last night smelling like someone else's perfume. I didn't sleep with him, but you want to. Elara said nothing. Serafina smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to finish out your resignation period. You're going to leave Seoul, and you're never going to contact Kael Min again. You don't get to tell me what to do. No, but I can make your life extraordinarily difficult if you don't cooperate. Serafina leaned forward slightly. You think the prosecutor's investigation is stressful? That's nothing compared to what I can do. My family has connections in every major institution in this country. 1 phone call and you'll never work in Seoul again. 2 phone calls and you'll be facing charges that will destroy your reputation. 3 phone calls and... I get the picture. Good. Serafina sat back. I'm not a monster, Ms. Vale. I understand that Kael is compelling, but he's mine. The engagement represents years of negotiation between our families, billions of dollars in combined assets. Strategic alliances that reshape entire industries. I'm not letting that collapse because he developed feelings for his assistant. Does he know you're here? Kael doesn't need to know everything I do to protect our interests. Your interests, Elara repeated, not his. They're the same thing. Are they? Something flickered across Serafina's face. Irritation, maybe, or uncertainty. Kael understands what this marriage means. What it accomplishes. He made his choice months ago. Then why are you here? Because sometimes men need to be reminded of their choices. Serafina stood, smoothing her dress. You're leaving in 2 days. Make sure you actually leave. If I find out you're still in Seoul, still contacting him, still trying to interfere with what we're building, well, let's just say you won't enjoy the consequences. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. For what it's worth, Serafina said without turning around, I do understand the appeal, Kael is remarkable, dangerous and brilliant, and completely magnetic. But he's also fundamentally selfish. He takes what he wants and destroys anyone who gets in his way, including people he cares about. You're wrong about him. Am I? Now Serafina did turn. He's known for months that you were struggling, that working for him was becoming untenable. Did he let you go? Did he make it easier? No. He fought to keep you close because losing you would be inconvenient. That's who he is, Ms. Vale. Someone who prioritizes his own needs above everything else. And you're different. No. Serafina smiled again. I'm exactly the same. That's why we work. She left without another word. Elara sat at her desk for a long time after, trying to slow her racing heart, trying to process what had just happened. Serafina knew. Worse, Serafina was willing to destroy her to protect the engagement. And Kael had no idea his fiancée was threatening the woman he'd kissed less than 12 hours ago. Elara's phone buzzed. Text from Kael. Kael, dinner tonight? She stared at the message. Thought about Serafina's threats, about the prosecutor's investigation, about the fact that staying in Kael's orbit was becoming more dangerous by the hour. Elara, sorry. Kael, tomorrow then. Elara, I'm leaving tomorrow. Kael, no, you're not. Elara, yes, I am. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, we need to talk. Elara, there's nothing left to say. She turned off her phone before he could respond. Then she started packing. Elara spent her last day at the office finishing documentation and trying to ignore the fact that Kael kept finding excuses to stop by her office. He'd ask about files, about pending projects, about transition plans for her replacement. All of it was pretense. They both knew it. By 5 p.m., most of the staff had left. The executive floor was quiet except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic far below. Elara was boxing up her personal items, a depressingly small collection after 4 years, when Kael appeared in her doorway. You're really doing this, he said. Yes. Even after last night. Especially after last night. Elara didn't look up from the box. Last night proved we can't be in the same space without making terrible decisions. That wasn't terrible. Yes, it was. Elara said, Serafina came to see me yesterday, she interrupted. Kael went very still. What? Your fiancée. The woman you're marrying in 3 months. She made it very clear that I need to disappear from your life. Elara finally looked up. Did you know she'd do that? No. Kael's expression had gone dangerous. What did she say? She threatened to destroy my career if I don't leave Seoul. Said her family has enough influence to make sure I never work again. She can't. Yes, she can. And we both know it. Elara sealed the box with tape. She's protecting her interests. Can't really blame her. I'll talk to her. And say what? That she's wrong to feel threatened? That kissing your assistant the night before doesn't mean anything? Elara shook her head. This is exactly why I need to leave. Your life is complicated in ways I can't navigate. Every choice I make affects your empire. Every mistake I make has consequences for dozens of people. I can't live like that. So you're running. I'm surviving. Kael moved into the office, closing the door behind him. You want to know what Serafina and I have? It's an arrangement, a business deal. There's no love, no passion, nothing real. Then why marry her? Because it makes sense strategically. That's not a reason. In my world, it's the only reason that matters. Elara picked up the box. Then I guess I don't belong in your world. She tried to move past him, but Kael caught her arm. Don't, he said quietly. Don't walk away like this. Like what? Like you hate me. I don't hate you. Elara met his eyes. I hate that loving you feels like slow-motion suicide. Kael's grip tightened. You love me? Don't. Say it again. Kael, please. And there was that word again, the one that destroyed every defense she tried to build. Yes, Elara said. I love you. I've loved you for longer than I want to admit. And it's destroying me because you're not mine. You'll never be mine. You belong to an empire and a woman who can give you things I never could. What if I don't want those things? Then you're lying to yourself. Kael pulled her closer, and Elara should have resisted, but she'd been resisting for 4 years, and she was so tired. Tell me what you want, right now. Just tell me and I'll make it happen. I want you to let me go. Anything but that. Then we're at an impasse. They stood there, neither willing to move first. Outside, Seoul was lighting up for the evening. Millions of people living their lives, completely unaware that two people in a corporate tower were trying to figure out how to want each other without destroying everything. Elara's phone rang. She pulled away to check it. Unknown number. Again. Don't answer, Kael said. She answered anyway. Hello? Ms. Vale. Prosecutor Han's voice was ice. I'm calling to inform you that we've issued an arrest warrant for Kael Min. Charges include racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. If you have any information about his current location, you're legally obligated to report it. Elara's blood went cold. I don't. We also have evidence suggesting you participated in several of the criminal enterprises. We're prepared to offer you immunity in exchange for testimony, but the offer expires in 24 hours. The line went dead. Elara stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear. What is it? Kael asked. She looked at him. This man she loved, this dangerous, brilliant, completely impossible man. And she knew, absolutely knew, that the next words out of her mouth would determine everything. They're coming for you, she said, and they think I can help them do it. Kael's expression didn't change. Not immediately. But Elara had spent 4 years learning to read the microscopic shifts in his face, the way his jaw tightened, the flicker in his eyes that meant he was already 3 moves ahead, calculating outcomes and casualties. How much time do we have? He asked. I don't know. Hours, maybe. They called you instead of showing up. That means they're not ready yet, still building the case. Kael moved to the window, looking down at the Seoul streets below, like he was surveying a battlefield. What did Han say exactly? Elara repeated the conversation word for word. By the time she finished, Kael had pulled out his phone and was sending rapid-fire texts to people Elara couldn't see. You need to disappear, she said. I'm not running. Kael, if I run, they win. Every politician I've leveraged, every rival I've held at bay, every alliance I've built, all of it collapses the second I look weak. He turned back to her. I run and I lose everything. You stay and you go to prison. Maybe. Or maybe I beat this the way I've beaten every other investigation. They have evidence this time, real evidence. Someone leaked. I know who leaked. Kael's voice had gone flat, deadly. One of my financial officers, man named Cho Min-jun. He's been skimming for months. I was building a case to remove him quietly. Instead, he went to the prosecutors first. Can you prove he's lying? About the skimming? Yes. About everything else? Kael shook his head. He has documentation, real documentation, meetings I took, money I moved, decisions I made that look criminal when stripped of context. Then what are you going to do? What I always do, find leverage and use it. Elara's stomach twisted. She'd watched Kael operate for 4 years, watched him turn enemies into allies and allies into weapons. She told herself it was just business, strategic thinking, necessary ruthlessness in a world that rewarded strength and punished weakness. But standing here now, watching him plan how to dismantle a legal case through intimidation and leverage, she saw it clearly for what it was. You're going to threaten people, she said quietly. I'm going to remind people of their obligations. That's the same thing. In my world, there's no difference. Kael moved toward her. You knew who I was when you started working for me. You knew what I did, what I was capable of. I know. Then why do you look at me like I'm a stranger? Because I love you and I hate what you're about to do. Because I spent 4 years pretending I could separate the man from the monster and I can't anymore. Because watching you choose power over everything else is killing me. I don't, Elara lied. Kael studied her face like he was trying to decode something written in a language he didn't speak. The immunity offer, are you considering it? No. You should. I'm not testifying against you. Even if it means going down with me? Yes. That's stupid, Elara. Probably. She picked up her box again. But I've apparently made a career out of stupid choices where you're concerned. Kyle's phone rang before he could respond. He answered without checking the caller ID. What? Elara watched his expression change. Surprise, then anger, then something that looked almost like fear. When? Pause. How many? Another pause. Lock it down. No one gets in or out without my direct authorization. He hung up and stood very still. What happened? Elara asked. Serafina's father just pulled out of the merger. The words didn't make sense at first. Elara heard them, but couldn't process what they meant. The merger between Kael's holdings and the Cho family empire had been in negotiation for 2 years. It represented billions in combined assets, strategic control over shipping routes that spanned 3 continents. The engagement to Serafina was the linchpin holding the entire structure together. Why would he pull out now? Elara asked. Because someone told him about the arrest warrant. Kael's voice was eerily calm. And he's not interested in merging his family's reputation with someone about to face criminal charges. Can you convince him? No. Kael set his phone down carefully. Cho Dae-jung doesn't make decisions based on emotion. He makes them based on risk assessment. I've become too much risk. What about Serafina? What about her? She came here yesterday, threatened me. She was protecting the engagement, protecting what you two were building. Serafina does what her father tells her to do. Always has. Kael moved to his desk, opening a locked drawer and pulling out a laptop Elara had never seen before. She wanted the marriage because it gave her power. Now that power is gone. Elara watched him boot up the laptop, fingers flying over keys with the kind of focused intensity she recognized from late nights when he was putting out fires or building new strategies. He was already moving past the shock, already calculating next steps. It should have been impressive. Instead, it made her chest ache. Kael, she said quietly, maybe you should run. I told you, I'm not running. You're about to lose everything anyway. Then I'll build it back. How? Without the Cho alliance, without the protection that merger provided, I'll figure it out. He didn't look up from the screen. I always do. Elara set the box down, walked around his desk, gently closed the laptop so he had to look at her. Listen to me, she said. You can't fight this alone. The prosecutors have evidence. Your allies are disappearing. Your fiancé's family just cut ties. You need to accept that maybe, just maybe, you can't win this one through leverage and intimidation. So what do you suggest? Leave. Tonight. Go somewhere they can't extradite you. Start over. And what? Abandon everything I built? Let everyone who betrayed me walk away winners? Yes, Kael laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. You don't understand how this works. If I run, I prove their case for them. I become exactly what they're accusing me of being. Every person I've ever done business with becomes suspect. Every alliance crumbles. People who depended on me will survive without you. Will be destroyed. Kael stood, putting them face to face. I have employees, hundreds of them. Legitimate businesses that provide real jobs. Contracts that support families. If I go down, they go down too. That's not your responsibility. It's exactly my responsibility. They stared at each other across inches of space that felt like miles. I'm leaving Seoul tonight, Elara said. With or without you. I already have a ticket to Singapore. From there, I'll figure out what comes next. Running away. Surviving. She touched his face gently. Come with me. Just walk away from all of this and start something different. I can't. You mean you won't? Same thing. Elara pulled her hand back. Then I guess this is goodbye. She picked up her box and walked toward the door. Elara, she stopped but didn't turn around. I need you to do something for me, Kael said. What? There's a safe in my apartment. Behind the painting in the bedroom. Inside is a hard drive. If something happens to me, if they arrest me or if this goes bad, I need you to get that drive and disappear. What's on it? Everything. Every transaction. Every meeting. Every piece of evidence that proves half the politicians in Seoul are as dirty as I am. Kael's voice was steady, matter of fact. It's my insurance policy. The thing that's kept me alive this long. Why would you give me that? Because you're the only person I trust not to use it unless you absolutely have to. Elara turned around. Kael, promise me. If I go down, you get that drive and you run. Don't try to save me. Don't try to negotiate. Just disappear and stay disappeared. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. You're leaving in, he checked his watch, 3 hours. You said so yourself. That was before. Before what? Before you realized I might actually lose? Before you saw that I'm not invincible? Kael moved closer. Nothing's changed, Elara. I'm still the same person, still fighting the same battles. You want to survive? Then survive. Get on that plane and don't look back. And if I don't, then you're even more stupid than I thought. The words were cruel, deliberately so. Elara recognized it for what it was. Kael trying to push her away, trying to protect her the only way he knew how. It didn't make it hurt less. Fine, she said. I'll get on the plane. I'll disappear. I'll forget I ever worked for you. Good. But first I'm going to your apartment and getting that hard drive. Because if you're going down, I'm making sure you take every corrupt politician with you. Something flickered across Kael's face. Relief, maybe. Or fear. The code is your birthday, he said quietly. That stopped Elara cold. What? The safe. The code is your birthday. Day, month, year. Why? Because you're the only person who never wanted anything from me except honesty. Seemed fitting. Elara's throat felt tight. You're an idiot. I know. She left before she could change her mind about any of this. Kael's apartment was exactly as she remembered. Cold, expensive, more museum than home. Elara moved through the living room without turning on lights, navigating by the city glow filtering through the windows. The bedroom was darker. She found the painting, an abstract piece that probably cost more than her annual salary, and removed it carefully from the wall. The safe was small, professional, military grade. Elara entered her birthday with shaking fingers. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside was the hard drive, exactly as Kael had said. Also inside, a passport with Kael's photo, but a different name. Cash in 3 different currencies, and a small velvet box that made Elara's heart stutter. She picked up the box, opened it. Inside was a ring, simple white gold band with a single diamond. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed wealth or power. Just elegant. Perfect. Elara stared at it, trying to process what this meant. Why Kael had a ring hidden in his safe. Who it was for. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, almost threw the phone across the room and got the hell out of this apartment and this city and this entire situation. But she answered. Ms. Vale? Not Prosecutor Han this time. A man's voice she didn't recognize. You need to come to Hanseong Tower. Now. Who is this? Security. There's been an incident. Mr. Min asked for you specifically. Elara's blood went cold. What kind of incident? I can't discuss it over the phone. Please come immediately. The line went dead. Elara stood frozen in Kael's bedroom, ring box in one hand, phone in the other. Every instinct screamed trap. This was how people disappeared, how witnesses became casualties. But if Kael was actually in trouble, she shoved the hard drive and the ring into her bag and ran. Hansung Tower was dark when Elara arrived. Not just the executive floors, the entire building. Every window black. No security in the lobby, no late-night cleaning staff. Nothing. Elara's heels echoed in the empty marble space. She moved toward the elevators carefully, every nerve screaming danger. The elevator opened before she could press the button. Inside stood Serafina Cho. Get in, Serafina said. Elara didn't move. Where's Kael? Safe. For now. We need to talk. I'm not interested in... Someone tried to kill him tonight. Serafina's voice was flat, cold. Get in the elevator or leave. But if you leave, you'll never see him again. Elara stepped inside. The doors closed and Serafina pressed the button for the executive floor. They rode in silence, neither looking at each other. I told you to leave Seoul, Serafina said finally. I'm leaving tonight. Clearly not fast enough. The elevator opened onto darkness. Serafina led Elara through the executive suite using only the light from her phone. They passed Elara's office. Empty now, personal items gone. Past conference rooms where she'd watched Kael negotiate with people who would have killed him if they thought they could get away with it. Kael's office door was closed. Serafina opened it without knocking. Inside, Kael sat behind his desk, shirt torn, blood on his collar. Not his blood, Elara realized with shock. Someone else's. 2 men in suits stood near the windows. Security, probably, or cleanup crew. Hard to tell the difference in Kael's world. What happened? Elara demanded. Someone tried to kill me in the parking garage, Kael said calmly. 2 men, professionals. They're dead now. He said it so casually, like he was discussing quarterly earnings instead of bodies. Who sent them? Elara asked. That's what we're trying to determine. Serafina moved to stand beside Kael's desk, and Elara noticed for the first time how comfortable she looked there. How natural, like she'd stood in that exact spot 1,000 times. Could be the prosecutors. Could be one of Kael's rivals. Could be someone who thinks he's weak right now and wanted to capitalize. Could be your father, Kael said, looking at Serafina. Something passed between them. Some silent communication Elara couldn't decode. My father wouldn't risk that kind of exposure, Serafina said finally. Not his style. No, his style is cutting ties and letting other people do the dirty work. He's protecting his interests. By sacrificing me. By being pragmatic. Serafina turned to Elara. Did you get the hard drive? Elara's hand instinctively moved to her bag. How did you... Because I told her about it, Kael interrupted. Serafina and I have been planning this for weeks. The words didn't make sense. Elara looked between them, trying to understand what she was hearing. Planning what? She asked slowly. An exit strategy. Serafina pulled out a file folder and set it on Kael's desk. The arrest warrant isn't real. The investigation is real, but the warrant was manufactured. We leaked it. Elara's brain felt like it was moving through water. Why would you... To flesh out who's actually trying to destroy me, Kael said. Someone inside my organization has been leaking information to prosecutors for months. Someone close enough to know details that should be protected. We needed to create a crisis big enough to force them into the open. And the assassination attempt? Was real, Serafina confirmed. We didn't plan that. Someone took the bait faster than we expected. Elara sat down heavily in the chair across from Kael's desk. So this whole thing, the investigation, the warrant, your engagement falling apart. The engagement was always going to end, Serafina said. My father and I had already decided the merger was too risky, too much political exposure. We were looking for a clean exit. So you used me. Elara looked at Kael. You let me think you were about to lose everything. Let me think I had to choose between my freedom and protecting you. You manipulated me into revealing how I felt so you could, what, test my loyalty? No, Kael stood. That's not... Then what was it? It was me trying to give you an out. His voice was rough, exhausted. You wanted to leave. You were leaving. This gave you a reason to actually go. No guilt, no second guessing, just clean. You're unbelievable. Elara stood, backing toward the door. You staged an entire crisis to manipulate me into leaving? To protect you from making a choice you'd regret. You don't get to decide what I'd regret. Someone tried to kill me tonight. Kael's control finally cracked. 2 professionals with nothing in their background that connects them to anyone I know. Which means someone new is making moves. Someone dangerous enough to hire that kind of talent. And you think I want you anywhere near this? So instead you lied to me, made me think you were about to be arrested, made me believe I had to choose between my freedom and your safety. Elara's hands were shaking with rage. Do you have any idea how that felt? Standing in your office trying to decide if I should destroy my entire life to protect someone who apparently doesn't even trust me enough to tell me the truth? I trust you more than anyone. Then why lie? Because trusting you and keeping you safe are 2 different things. Kael moved around the desk. You want honesty? Here it is. I'm in love with you. I have been for longer than I want to admit, and watching you walk away is destroying me. But letting you stay, letting you be part of this world, would be worse, because eventually someone would use you to get to me, and I can't. His voice broke. I can't let that happen. Elara stood frozen. She'd imagined him saying those words 1,000 different ways. Late at night, after too much wine. In quiet moments between meetings. Whispered confessions in darkened rooms. Never like this. Never as justification for manipulation. You don't get to make decisions for me, she said quietly. I'm not a piece on your board. I'm not a variable you can manage. I know. Do you? Because everything you just did, everything you and Serafina planned, was designed to control my choices without telling me what was really happening. He was trying to protect you, Serafina said. I didn't ask for your opinion. Well, you're getting it anyway. Serafina stepped forward, her perfect composure cracking slightly. You think Kael manipulates everyone because he likes control? He does it because it's the only way he knows how to keep people alive. His father died because he trusted the wrong person. His mother was killed by men who wanted to send a message. Everyone he's ever cared about has been used against him. So yes, he manipulates. He controls. He lies when he thinks it'll keep people safe. Because the alternative, trusting people to make good choices in a world designed to destroy them, has never worked out well for him. Elara looked at Kael. Is that true? Does it matter? Yes. Kael was quiet for a long moment. My father was a businessman. Legitimate. Honest. He trusted a partner who turned out to be working for a rival family. They tortured him for information and then killed him as a warning to anyone else who might interfere with their operations. I was 16. And your mother? And your... Died in a car accident when I was 23. Except it wasn't an accident. Someone cut her brake lines because I'd refused to partner with them on a deal. His voice had gone flat, emotionless. So yes, everyone I've ever cared about has been used to hurt me. You want to know why I lie? Why I manipulate? Because caring about people makes them targets. And I've spent the last 10 years making sure I never care about anyone enough to give my enemies that kind of leverage. Until me, Elara said softly. Until you. The silence stretched between them. Outside, Seoul glittered. Indifferent, beautiful, dangerous. The ring, Elara said. In your safe. Who was it for? Kael's expression didn't change. You. You bought me an engagement ring 6 months ago, while you were negotiating an engagement to Serafina. Yes, that's insane. I know. Why would you? Because I'm an idiot who fell in love with someone I couldn't have and couldn't let go. Kael looked at her with something that might have been desperation. The engagement to Serafina was strategy. It was always strategy. But somewhere in the last year I realized that strategy wasn't worth a damn if it meant losing you. So you bought a ring you'd never give me and planned an elaborate scheme to make me leave without feeling guilty about it. Elara shook her head. You're right. You are an idiot. I'm aware. One of the security guards cleared his throat. Sir, we should move locations. If someone tried once, they'll try again, Kael finished. I know. He looked at Elara. You need to leave. Your flight to Singapore, already missed it. Then get on the next one. No. Elara, no. She moved closer to him. You want to protect me? Fine. But you don't get to do it by lying to me. You want me to leave because it's safer? Convince me. But don't manipulate me into it. You're not listening. I'm listening perfectly. You think caring about me makes me a target. You think the only way to keep me safe is to push me away. And maybe you're right. Maybe staying near you will get me killed. Elara grabbed his shirt, forcing him to look at her. But I'd rather die with you than live without you. So either accept that or physically throw me out of this building. Those are your options. Kael stared at her. You're insane. Learned from the best. For just a second, he smiled. Actually smiled. Then his expression went serious again. If you stay, everything changes, he said. No more assistant. No more pretending you're just staff. You're either with me or you're not. And if you're with me, that means accepting all the danger that comes with it. I accept. Elara, I accept, she repeated. Whatever that means, whatever comes next, I'm staying. Serafina made a small sound that might have been approval or disgust. Hard to tell. Then we need to move, Kael said. Now. All of us. Whoever sent those men will send more. We have maybe an hour before... The lights went out. Not just in the office, the entire building. Every backup system, every emergency light, total darkness. Elara felt Kael's hand close around her wrist, pulling her down behind the desk. Don't move, he whispered. In the darkness, Elara heard the elevator ding softly. Someone was coming up. Someone who had cut the power and bypassed security and knew exactly where they were. Kael's grip on her wrist tightened, and Elara realized with crystalline clarity that staying, loving him, meant this. Meant hiding in darkness while trained killers hunted them. Meant every choice became life and death. Meant the man she loved was about to kill again to protect her. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Alive. For the first time in 4 years, absolutely alive. The office door opened with a whisper of sound. Footsteps. Multiple. Professional. Careful. Kael's security moved first. Elara heard the impact of bodies, a grunt, the wet sound of a blade finding flesh, then gunfire. The muzzle flashes lit the room in strobes. Elara saw Kael moving, fast, efficient, brutal. Saw Serafina drop to the floor behind a filing cabinet. Saw men in black tactical gear spreading through the office with the kind of coordination that spoke of military training. This wasn't just hired killers. This was an execution squad. Kael grabbed Elara's hand and pulled her toward the private bathroom. They made it 3 steps before someone cut them off. A man in full tactical gear, no face visible behind the mask. Gun raised. Kael put himself between Elara and the gun. Move, the man said, voice modulated, unrecognizable. No! I have orders to take the woman alive. You're optional. Elara's blood turned to ice. They weren't here for Kael. They were here for her. You're going to have to kill me, Kael said calmly. That can be arranged. The man's finger tightened on the trigger, and Elara realized with perfect, horrifying clarity that Kael was about to die protecting her from an enemy they didn't even know existed. She grabbed the ring box from her bag and threw it as hard as she could at the window behind the tactical soldier. The glass didn't break, but the distraction was enough. Kael moved, fast. So fast Elara barely saw it. He had the man's gun twisted away, elbow crashing into the mask, fingers finding pressure points that dropped the soldier like a stone. More gunfire from the outer office, screaming, the sound of bodies hitting marble. Kael grabbed the fallen soldier's weapon and pushed Elara into the bathroom. Stay here. Don't you dare. He closed the door in her face, locked it. Elara pounded on the door, screaming his name, but he was already gone. Back into the chaos. Back into a fight he might not win. She pressed her ear to the door, trying to hear what was happening. Gunfire. So much gunfire. Then silence. Horrible, complete silence. Elara counted her heartbeats, made it to 30 before she couldn't take it anymore. She picked up the marble soap dispenser and smashed it through the bathroom mirror, grabbed a shard of glass, used it to jimmy the door lock the way Kael had taught her during a late-night conversation about security protocols. The door opened. The office was dark again, quiet. Bodies on the floor. Tactical soldiers. Kael's security. No Kael. No Serafina. Just blood and darkness and the sound of her own breathing too loud in the sudden quiet. Elara stepped carefully over a fallen soldier, moving toward the main office door. That's when she saw it. Written on Kael's desk in fresh blood. A message. You have 24 hours to deliver the hard drive. Come alone. If you bring Kael Min, he dies. If you call police, he dies. If you tell anyone, he dies. Instructions coming. Elara stared at the words, trying to process what they meant. They'd taken Kael. Whoever was behind this, whoever wanted the hard drive badly enough to stage an assault on Hanseong Tower, had taken Kael alive, and they wanted her to trade the evidence for his life. Elara's hands were shaking so badly she could barely pull out her phone. One missed call from an unknown number. She called it back. It rang once before someone answered. Ms. Vale. The voice was digitally distorted, inhuman. I believe we have something you want, and you have something we need. Let's negotiate. Elara's finger hovered over the callback button. heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Blood from Kael's desk had smeared across her hand when she'd braced herself against it. She could smell copper and gunpowder and her own fear. "I'm listening," she said into the phone. "Smart." The distorted voice carried a note of approval that made her skin crawl. "Here's how this works. You have the hard drive Kael Min was stupid enough to tell you about. We have Kael Min. Simple exchange. How do I know he's alive? You don't, but you'll operate on faith because you're in love with him, and love makes people do catastrophically stupid things." Elara forced herself to breathe, to think. "Where and when?" "Tomorrow night, midnight. The old Hanam-dong warehouse district, Building 7. Come alone. Bring the drive. If we detect any surveillance, any backup, any hint that you've involved authorities, Kael dies. Slowly, painfully. We'll send you pieces. I want proof of life first. You're not in a position to make demands." "Then you're not getting the hard drive." Elara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I need to know he's alive. I need to hear his voice. Otherwise, I assume you've already killed him, and this is just you trying to tie up loose ends." Silence stretched across the line, long enough that Elara wondered if they'd hung up. Then, "Hold." Static, shuffling sounds, a door opening, then Kael's voice, rough and strained. "Elara, don't—" A grunt of pain, impact, the phone falling. "Satisfied?" the distorted voice asked. "He's alive, damaged, but functional. Whether he stays that way depends entirely on your cooperation." The line went dead. Elara stood alone in Kael's destroyed office, surrounded by bodies and blood and the wreckage of everything they'd built, and tried not to fall apart. She had 24 hours to figure out how to save the man she loved from people professional enough to assault Hansong Tower and disciplined enough to take him alive. 24 hours with no backup, no resources, and no idea who she was actually fighting. Her phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. A single photo. Kael bound to a chair in what looked like a concrete room, face bruised, blood on his shirt, but alive, conscious, staring at the camera with eyes that held no fear, only calculation. Even captured, even beaten, he was already planning his next move. Elara saved the photo and pocketed her phone. Then she did the only thing she could think of. She called Serafina. Serafina answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "Kael's office. Where are you?" "Safe. I got out during the firefight. Security pulled me." Serafina's voice was controlled, but Elara could hear the strain underneath. "Kael?" "Gone. They took him." Elara moved toward the elevator, stepping carefully around bodies. "They want the hard drive. Exchange tomorrow night." "Don't." "Excuse me?" "Don't make the trade." Serafina's voice was ice. "The drive contains enough evidence to destroy half of Seoul's power structure. Politicians, business leaders, crime families. If that information gets out, it causes chaos. But if it falls into the wrong hands, if someone uses it for leverage instead of exposure, it becomes a weapon." "I don't care about the drive. I care about Kael." "Kael would tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Don't trade. Let him handle this." "He's tied to a chair being beaten by professionals." Elara's voice cracked. "How exactly is he supposed to handle this?" "The same way he's handled every other impossible situation, by being smarter and more ruthless than his enemies. That's not a plan. That's faith. In Kael's world, they're the same thing." Serafina paused. "Where's the exchange?" "Hanam-dong warehouse district, Building 7, midnight tomorrow." "That's abandoned territory. Used to be controlled by the Park family before Kael absorbed their operations 3 years ago. Lots of places to hide, lots of exits, smart location for an ambush." "Which is exactly what it'll be." Elara reached the lobby, stepping into the empty street. Seoul was still awake around her. Neon signs, traffic, people living their lives completely unaware that 2 floors up, a battle had just destroyed the executive suite of one of the city's most powerful corporations. "They're not planning to let either of us walk away." "No. They're planning to take the drive and eliminate the only 2 people who know what's on it." "Then what do I do?" Serafina was quiet for a long moment. "You want the truth or the comforting lie?" "Truth. You're going to die tomorrow night. So is Kael. The only variable is whether you take down whoever's behind this before they kill you."
Elara's chest felt tight. That's your advice?
That's reality. You want advice? Here it is. Figure out who wants that drive badly enough to stage a military assault. Figure out what they're planning to do with the information. Then decide if Kael's life is worth letting them do it. Of course his life is worth it. Even if it means unleashing chaos across Seoul? Even if it means giving someone the tools to destroy thousands of lives? Yes.
Then you're as crazy as he is. Serafina's voice softened slightly.
For what it's worth, I hope you both make it out. Kael and I never had anything real, but I respect what you two have. It's rare. Worth fighting for. Help me. I can't. My father made it clear. I'm out. No more involvement with Kael's operations. I help you. I lose everything. You're just going to let him die? I'm going to let him be who he's always been. Someone who survives impossible situations through sheer willpower and careful planning. Serafina paused. But if you do somehow pull this off, if you manage to get him out alive, tell him I'm sorry for pulling out, for not being stronger when it mattered. Tell him yourself. I can't. The line went dead. Elara stood on the empty Seoul street trying to process everything. Serafina was out. The prosecutors were circling. Kael's allies had disappeared. She was alone with a hard drive full of evidence and 24 hours to figure out how to use it. She pulled out the drive, staring at the innocuous piece of technology that had somehow become the center of all this chaos. Years of documentation, proof of crimes committed by people powerful enough to rewrite laws, evidence that could destroy empires or build new ones depending on who controlled it. Kael had trusted her with it. Now she had to figure out why. Elara spent the rest of the night in a hotel room under a fake name, laptop open, going through the files on the hard drive with mounting horror. Serafina had been right. This wasn't just evidence of Kael's operations. It was a map of Seoul's entire shadow economy. Every bribe, every illegal deal, every connection between legitimate business and organized crime. She found financial records showing that 3 of Seoul's most powerful politicians were taking monthly payments from crime families. Email chains proving that 2 major corporations were using Kael's network to move products that would never pass customs inspection. Meeting notes detailing how specific prosecutors had been compromised. It was comprehensive, devastating. Exactly the kind of leverage that kept Kael alive, despite having more enemies than allies. But it was also a weapon that could reshape Seoul's power structure if used correctly, or destroy everything if it fell into the wrong hands. Elara's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She almost didn't answer, almost threw the phone across the room and ran. Instead, what? Ms. Vale, this is Detective Yoon from the Organized Crime Unit. The voice was different from the distorted kidnapper. Professional. Official. We need to speak with you regarding the incident at Hansong Tower. Elara's blood went cold. How did you get this number? We've been monitoring Kael Min's operations for months. When his building's security system went dark, we responded. Found quite a scene. Multiple casualties. Evidence of professional assault. And you, listed as his executive assistant, suddenly unreachable. I have nothing to say. You're not a suspect, but we need your cooperation. We know Min was taken. We know someone's making demands. And we know you have something they want. I don't know what you're talking about. The hard drive, Ms. Vale. We know about the hard drive. Elara's hand tightened on the phone. You're fishing. We're trying to prevent more bodies. Whoever took Min is connected to operations we've been investigating for years. This is bigger than you realize. If you know so much, why do you need me? Because you're the one they contacted. You're the one they want at the exchange, which means you're our best chance at identifying who's really behind this. You want me to wear a wire. We want you to let us help. By using me as bait. Detective Yoon was quiet for a moment. Yes, but controlled bait. We put surveillance in place, track whoever shows up, make arrests when the exchange happens. You get Min back alive, and we get the people trying to destabilize Seoul's entire power structure. And if they detect your surveillance, if they realize I'm not alone, then we adapt. By which you mean Kael dies. By which I mean we do everything possible to prevent that outcome. Elara closed the laptop. I need time to think. You have until tonight. Then we move forward with or without your cooperation. If you're at that warehouse tomorrow, we'll be watching. Better we're coordinated than working against each other." The line went dead. Elara sat on the hotel bed trying to process this new variable. The police knew about the exchange. They were planning to use it as an opportunity to make arrests, which meant tomorrow night would be even more chaotic than she'd anticipated. Cops watching, kidnappers waiting. Kael somewhere in the middle, tied to a chair, counting on her to make the right choice. She had less than 24 hours to figure out what that choice actually was. Pasiem. By morning, Elara had a plan. It was desperate and probably suicidal, but it was something. She'd spent the remaining hours of the night making copies of the hard drive. 3 identical drives, each containing the same information. She'd also written detailed instructions and packaged them in sealed envelopes addressed to different recipients. One to a journalist she'd worked with years ago. Someone outside Seoul's power structure who could publish the information if everything went wrong. One to Detective Yoon. Insurance in case the police decided to use her as expendable bait. One to Serafina. A final backup if everyone else failed. Then she'd done the hardest thing she'd ever done in her life. She'd recorded a video message to Kael. Sitting in the sterile hotel room, face unwashed, voice raw, she'd looked at the laptop camera and said everything she'd never had the courage to say before. About how she'd fallen in love with him during a late-night meeting in year 2 when he'd stopped mid-negotiation to ask if she was okay because she'd looked stressed. About how she'd nearly quit a dozen times because staying near him hurt too much. About how watching him announce his engagement to Serafina had been the worst moment of her life until this one. About how if she didn't make it out of tomorrow night, she wanted him to know that loving him had been the most dangerous, terrifying, beautiful thing she'd ever experienced. She'd saved the video to a cloud account with instructions to send it automatically if she didn't check in within 48 hours. Then she'd allowed herself exactly 10 minutes to cry. After that, she'd gotten to work. Check. The warehouse district looked exactly like Elara had feared. Abandoned, decaying, full of shadows and hiding places. Building 7 was an old textile factory that had been closed for years, windows broken, graffiti covering the walls. Perfect place for an ambush. Elara arrived at 11:30 p.m., 30 minutes early, dressed in dark jeans and a jacket, with the hard drive in her inner pocket. She'd left her phone in the hotel room with a note for housekeeping to call Detective Yoon if she wasn't back by morning. No surveillance, no backup, no weapons. Just her in the drive and the desperate hope that whoever had Kael wanted the information badly enough to keep him alive through the exchange. The building's main entrance was open. Elara stepped inside carefully, letting her eyes adjust to the darkness. Empty factory floor. Rows of old machinery covered in dust. Metal stairs leading to a catwalk above. And in the center of the space, illuminated by a single spotlight powered by a portable generator, Kael tied to a chair. He looked worse than the photo. Fresh bruises. Blood dried on his split lip. But his eyes were alert, tracking her movement as she approached. Elara was halfway across the floor when someone spoke from the shadows above. "Stop there!" She froze. The voice was still distorted but coming from the catwalk. Multiple heat signatures moving in the darkness above. At least 5 people, maybe more. "Show me the drive," the voice commanded. Elara pulled it from her pocket, holding it up. "Good. Now walk forward slowly and place it on the ground 10 feet from Man, then back away. Not until you release him. That's not how this works." "Then we don't have a deal." Elara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "You want the drive, you let him go first. I'm not stupid enough to give you everything before getting something in return." Silence from above. Then movement. Someone descending the stairs. A woman stepped into the light. Mid-50s, elegant suit, perfectly styled hair. She looked like she belonged at a corporate board meeting, not a hostage exchange in an abandoned warehouse. Elara recognized her immediately from the files on the hard drive. "Minister Park," she said quietly. "Ms. Vale." The woman smiled. "You've been doing your homework." Park Ji-yun, Minister of Justice, one of the most powerful political figures in Seoul. According to the files Elara had spent all night reading, Park had been taking payments from 3 different crime families for years, using her position to redirect investigations, protect operations, destroy evidence. She was also the person most directly threatened by the information on Kael's drive. "You're behind this," Elara said. "Behind what? An unfortunate incident involving a dangerous criminal? Mr. Min has made a lot of enemies over the years. I'm simply facilitating a resolution. By having him kidnapped and beaten. By reminding him that even kings can be toppled." Park moved closer, heels clicking on the concrete floor. "You see, Ms. Vale, your Mr. Min made a critical error. He thought keeping evidence of everyone's crimes would protect him, mutually assured destruction, but he forgot something important." "What?" "That some of us would rather burn everything down than let him control our futures." Park gestured to the men in the shadows. "The hard drive, please." "Release Kael first." "No." "Then we're at an impasse." Park pulled a gun from her jacket. Not military grade, something small and elegant that probably cost more than most people's cars. She aimed it at Kael's head with steady hands. "Last chance," Park said. "The drive or his life." Elara's heart was trying to claw out of her chest. Every instinct screamed to comply, to hand over the drive and pray Park kept her word. But Kael's eyes were locked on hers, and she could read the message there clearly. Don't. Don't give her the leverage. Don't trust her to keep her word. Don't believe for a second that they're both walking out of here alive. "If you kill him, you get nothing," Elara said. "I get to watch him die. That's not nothing. You also get exposed. I made copies of the drive, sent them to journalists, police, people outside your reach. If I don't check in by morning, everything on here goes public. Every crime, every bribe, every connection between you and organized crime families. Your career ends. Your life ends. You'll spend whatever time you have left in prison." Park's expression didn't change, but Elara saw the calculation behind her eyes. "You're bluffing." "Try me. Even if you did make copies, destroying me doesn't save Min. It just means we all go down together." "True. But at least I'll have the satisfaction of watching you burn." Park laughed. Actually laughed. "You're more interesting than I expected. I can see why Min kept you around." She lowered the gun slightly. "Here's a counteroffer. You give me the drive and all the copies. I let you both walk away. We pretend this never happened. You leave Seoul and never come back." "Why would you let us go?" "Because I'm pragmatic. If the information goes public, it destroys me along with dozens of others. If you die, your insurance protocol kicks in and the information goes public anyway. But if you simply disappear, if you and Min vanish quietly into whatever life you can build elsewhere, everyone wins. Except we lose everything we built here. Small price for your lives." Elara looked at Kael. He shook his head fractionally. "No, he'd rather die than run." "Of course he would." Elara turned back to Park. "I need guarantees, written immunity, safe passage out of the country, money to start over. Done. And I need to hear it from you, on record, admitting what you've done." Park's smile faded. "Not a chance." "Then no deal. You're not in a position to negotiate. I'm the only one with what you want. That's exactly the position to negotiate from." They stared at each other across 10 feet of empty warehouse floor. Behind Park, her men shifted nervously. Waiting for orders, waiting to see how this resolved, Park raised her gun again. "Final offer. Give me the drive or watch him die. You have 10 seconds to decide." "Don't!" Kael's voice cut through the tension. First time he'd spoken. "Elara, don't." "Shut up," Park said. "She's going to kill us both anyway," Kael continued, voice steady despite the blood on his face. "The second you hand over that drive, she eliminates the only witnesses who know what's on it. That's her play. That's always been her play." 8 seconds, Park said. "Give the drive to the police," Kael said. "Let it all come out. Burn down the entire system if that's what it takes." 6 seconds. "Kael, I love you," he said simply. "Whatever happens next, I need you to know that." 4 seconds. Elara's hands were shaking. Every instinct screamed to save him, to give Park what she wanted and pray for mercy. But Kael's eyes were steady, accepting, ready. He'd made his choice. Now she had to make hers. 2 seconds. Elara threw the hard drive, not at Park, at the window behind her. The glass shattered and the drive sailed through, disappearing into the darkness outside. For one perfect moment, everyone froze. Then chaos erupted. Park screamed orders. Her men scattered toward the exits. Someone, Elara couldn't see who, tackled her from behind, driving her to the concrete floor. Gunshots rang out. Not from Park's people, from outside. The police had been watching after all. Detective Yoon and his team storming the building, using the broken window as an entry point. Elara scrambled toward Kael, fingers fumbling with the ropes binding him. She got one hand free before someone grabbed her hair and yanked her backward. One of Park's men, gun raised. Kael moved faster than should have been possible for someone who'd been tied up and beaten. His freed hand shot out, catching the man's wrist, twisting until the gun clattered to the floor. Then Kael was on his feet, one arm still bound to the chair he'd broken free from, using it as a weapon. He swung it like a club, catching the man in the ribs with a crack Elara felt in her bones. More gunfire, shouting, police flooding in from multiple entrances. Park trying to run, but getting cut off by Detective Yoon and two other officers. Elara found the gun on the floor and grabbed it. She'd never fired a weapon in her life, but she understood the basic mechanics. Safety off, finger on trigger, point at threats. One of Park's men appeared from the shadows, weapon raised, aiming at Kael's back. Elara didn't think. She just fired. The recoil shocked her. The sound was deafening, but the man went down, clutching his shoulder, weapon skittering away. Kael turned, saw what she'd done, and something that might have been pride flashed across his battered face. Then more police, more suspects being tackled and restrained, more chaos until suddenly it was over. The warehouse went quiet except for groaning injured people and police calling for medics. Detective Yoon approached Elara carefully, hands visible. "Ms. Vale, you're safe now. Put down the weapon." She did. Hands numb. Brain trying to process what had just happened. Kael was beside her in seconds, free from the destroyed chair, pulling her against him with arms that shook slightly. "Are you hurt?" "No. You?" "I've had worse." "That's not comforting." "Wasn't meant to be." They stood there holding each other while police secured the scene, while paramedics arrived to treat the wounded, while Seoul's Minister of Justice was read her rights and placed in handcuffs. Detective Yoon returned holding a sealed evidence bag. Inside was the hard drive, recovered from outside the warehouse. "We'll need this as evidence," he said. "Take it," Kael said. "I don't need it anymore." "Mr. Min, I should warn you, everything on here will become part of the public record. Your operations, your connections, your own crimes." "I know." "You'll face charges." "I know that too." Yoon looked between them. "You threw away your leverage. Your protection. Why?" Kael's arm tightened around Elara. "Because some things matter more than power." 3 hours later, Elara sat in a hospital waiting room while doctors examined Kael. Bruised ribs, concussion, various lacerations. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to require observation. Serafina appeared at 1 a.m., still perfectly composed despite the hour. "I heard what happened," she said, sitting beside Elara. "How?" "I still have connections, even if I'm officially out." Serafina handed her a cup of coffee from the hospital vending machine. "You threw away the leverage. Everyone's talking about it. The woman who chose love over power." "I chose the truth over lies." "There's a difference." "Is there?" Serafina smiled slightly. "Park's arrested. At least 6 politicians resigned this morning once word got out about the drive's contents. Prosecutors are building cases against dozens of others. You effectively dismantled Seoul's shadow government in one night." "We dismantled it." "No, this was you." Serafina stood. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Kael's been carrying that weight for too long. Maybe now he can actually be free. Free to go to prison." "Maybe. But free from the constant calculation, the endless leverage, the fear that everyone he cares about will be used against him." Serafina headed toward the exit. "Take care of him. He's going to need someone who can handle the fallout." "Wait," Elara called. "The ring, in his safe. Did you know about it?" Serafina turned back. "I helped him pick it out. He was terrified the entire time, kept saying it was stupid, that he'd never be able to give it to you. But he bought it anyway." "Why would you help him?" "Because despite our arrangement, despite everything, I wanted him to have something real. Someone real. And that was always you."
Serafina's smile was sad. Be happy, Ms. Vale. You earned it. She left before Elara could respond. A doctor emerged from the examination room. Ms. Vale? Mr. Min is asking for you.
Elara found Kael sitting on the examination table, bruises blooming purple across his ribs, bandage on his head. He looked exhausted, beaten, absolutely human in a way she'd rarely seen him. Hey, he said. Hey, yourself. That was the stupidest thing you've ever done. Learned from the best. Kael laughed, then winced. Don't make me laugh. Hurts. Elara moved closer, carefully avoiding his injuries. I shot someone tonight. I know. Saved my life. I've never shot anyone before. You did fine. I'm probably going to have nightmares about it. Welcome to my world. Kael reached for her hand. The police want to question me in the morning, build their case. I'll probably face charges. Conspiracy, money laundering, half a dozen other things. I know. I might go to prison. I know that too. You should leave. Get on a plane to Singapore like you originally planned. Start over somewhere safe. Elara looked at him. This dangerous, brilliant, impossible man who'd somehow become everything to her. Is that what you want? I want you to be safe. That's not what I asked. Kael was quiet for a long moment. No, it's not what I want. I want you to stay. I want to face whatever comes next together. I want to give you that ring I've been carrying for 6 months and ask you something I have no right to ask. Ask it anyway. Marry me. The words came out rough, uncertain, completely unguarded. Elara felt tears building. You're facing criminal charges. You might go to prison. Your empire is collapsing. You have nothing to offer except chaos and uncertainty. I know. Ask me again. Kael slid off the examination table, wincing with the movement. Then he got down on one knee in the hospital room, bruised and battered and absolutely serious. Elara Vale, you're terrifying and brilliant and completely insane. You've saved my life more times than I can count. You threw away leverage that would have protected you because you believed in truth over power. And I love you more than I've ever loved anything. He pulled the ring box from his pocket. Somehow he'd recovered it from the office before the police secured the scene. Will you marry me? Elara looked down at him. This man who'd spent 10 years building an empire on careful control and strategic calculation, now kneeling in a hospital room offering her nothing but himself. Yes, she said. Kael stood, slower than usual, still injured, and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her like they had all the time in the world, instead of hours before police interrogations and prosecutors and the complete upheaval of everything they'd built. When they finally broke apart, Elara rested her forehead against his. What happens now? She asked. I face the charges. Cooperate with investigators. Hope for leniency. And if you don't get it, then you wait for me, however long it takes. I will. Promise? Promise. They stood there in the hospital room, holding each other, while outside Seoul continued its transformation. Political careers ended, criminal networks collapsed, power structures reformed, and somewhere in the chaos, two people who'd spent 4 years pretending they didn't love each other finally stopped pretending. The fallout would be devastating. The consequences would be severe. But for the first time in years, Kael Min looked at his future and saw something worth more than power. He saw freedom. And standing beside him through whatever came next, prison, redemption, or something in between, was the only person who'd ever made him believe he could be something other than what he'd built himself to become. The fight wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning, but this time, he wouldn't face it alone. The interrogation room smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Kael sat across from 3 prosecutors and 2 detectives, hands folded on the metal table, expression calm despite the bruises still coloring his face purple and yellow. He'd been answering questions for 6 hours straight. Names, dates, operations. Carefully parsing truth from self-incrimination with the precision of someone who'd spent a decade navigating impossible situations. Elara watched through the one-way glass, arms wrapped around herself, while Park Sun-mi stood beside her making notes on a legal pad. He's doing well, Sunmi said quietly. Cooperative, but careful. They're building a case, but he's not giving them anything they don't already have from the hard drive. What's the likely outcome? Elara asked. Depends on how much weight the judge gives to his cooperation. He's exposing networks that have operated for decades, providing testimony that'll bring down politicians, business leaders, crime bosses. That counts for something. Sunmi paused. But he's also admitted to crimes that carry serious sentences. Money laundering, conspiracy, operating criminal enterprises. Best case, 3 to 5 years with possibility of parole. Worst case, 15 to 20. Elara's chest tightened. And if he refuses to testify against the others? Then we're looking at the worst case scenario. Prosecutors want leverage. If Kael gives them what they need, they'll argue for leniency. If he protects his old networks, Sunmi shrugged, they'll throw everything at him. Inside the interrogation room, one of the prosecutors leaned forward. Mr. Min, we have evidence you facilitated illegal arms transfers through your shipping operations. Can you confirm Senator Kim was involved in authorizing customs clearances? Kael was quiet for a long moment. Elara watched the calculation behind his eyes, weighing loyalty against survival, old alliances against new realities. Yes, he said finally. Senator Kim provided authorization in exchange for monthly payments. I can provide documentation of every transaction. The prosecutor smiled, another domino falling. Elara turned away from the glass. She couldn't watch him systematically dismantle everything he'd built. Every connection, every alliance, every protection he'd carefully constructed over 10 years. She found Detective Yoon in the hallway, reviewing case files. Ms. Vale, he said, looking up. How are you holding up? I shot someone 3 days ago, and the man I love is confessing to crimes that could put him in prison for decades. I've been better. Yoon's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Throwing that drive instead of handing it over. It gave us the opening we needed. Did I? Because right now it feels like I destroyed his life. You saved it. If you'd given Park what she wanted, you'd both be dead. Instead, Kael has a chance. Not a great one, maybe, but a chance. Elara leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. What happens to Park? Minister Park is facing 43 separate charges. Between what's on the drive and what Kael's testimony will provide, she'll spend the rest of her life in prison. Same with most of her network. Yoon closed the file. You dismantled one of the most corrupt systems in Seoul's history. People will study what you did for decades. I don't want to be studied. I want Kael to come home. That's not up to me. But the judge assigned to his case is known for rewarding cooperation. If Kael keeps providing testimony, if he helps us build cases against everyone involved. Yoon left the sentence unfinished. Elara understood what he wasn't saying. Hope, but no promises. Possibility, but no guarantees. The interrogation room door opened and Kael emerged, flanked by officers. He looked drained but steady. His eyes found Elara immediately. I need 5 minutes, he said to the officers. They exchanged glances. 3 minutes, right here, where we can see you. Kael crossed to where Elara stood and she let him pull her close despite the officers watching. He smelled like the interrogation room, antiseptic and stress, but underneath was still him. You okay? She asked against his shoulder. I've named 17 people in 6 hours. Destroyed alliances that took years to build. Confirmed crimes I'd spent a decade hiding. His voice was rough. But yeah, I'm okay. Liar. Maybe. He pulled back to look at her face. They want me to testify before a grand jury, multiple grand juries, build cases against everyone connected to the operations. Will you? Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. Kael touched her face gently, thumb tracing the dark circles under her eyes. If I cooperate, Sunmi thinks I might get 5 years, maybe less with good behavior. If I refuse, he didn't finish. Then cooperate. Some of these people, the ones I'm testifying against, they have long memories, longer reach. Turning on them means I'll never be safe again. Neither will you. I don't care. You should, but I don't. Elara caught his hand. 5 years, 15 years, whatever comes next, we face it together. You taught me that. Back in the warehouse when you told me to burn it all down instead of trying to protect what couldn't be saved. Sometimes the only way forward is through the fire. That's a terrible philosophy. I learned it from you. Kael almost smiled, then his expression turned serious. The ring, you're still wearing it. Elara looked down at the simple band on her finger. Of course I am. Even though I have nothing left to offer you, no empire, no power, no protection. You have you. That's enough. It shouldn't be, but it is. She kissed him softly. Stop trying to push me away to protect me. It didn't work 4 years ago, and it won't work now. One of the officers cleared his throat. Time's up, Mr. Min. Kael squeezed Elara's hand once before letting go. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be here. She watched them lead him back into the interrogation room, watched the door close, stood there until Sunmi gently touched her arm. You should go home. Get some rest. This is going to be a long process. How long? Months, maybe longer, multiple trials, dozens of testimonies. The entire legal system is going to be turned inside out by what Kael knows. Elara nodded numbly. What do I do until then? Live your life. He'd want that. But Elara wasn't sure what her life looked like without Kael in it. For 4 years, her entire existence had revolved around his empire. Now that empire was collapsing, and she was left trying to figure out who she was in the aftermath. 3 months later, Elara sat in a courtroom watching Kael testify against Senator Kim. He'd been on the stand for 2 days, methodically walking prosecutors through years of illegal transactions. Every question answered with precision, every detail provided with careful accuracy. The senator looked 20 years older than his official photos. Haggard, defeated. He'd tried to flee the country when news of the arrests first broke, but had been stopped at the airport. Now he sat at the defendant's table while Kael systematically destroyed any chance of acquittal. Mr. Min, the prosecutor said, can you explain the nature of your arrangement with Senator Kim? He provided legislative protection for my shipping operations. In exchange, I paid him 200 million won monthly and provided campaign contributions that bypassed legal limits. For how long did this arrangement continue? 7 years. And during that time, were illegal goods moved through your operations with the senator's knowledge? Kael didn't hesitate. Yes. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge called for order. Elara watched Kael's face remain perfectly neutral. No emotion, no regret, just facts delivered with surgical precision. This was the 5th trial he'd testified at. Park's trial had lasted 6 weeks and ended with her conviction on all 43 charges. 2 corporate executives had been sentenced to 15 years each. A crime boss Kael had worked with for 8 years was facing life in prison. And through it all, Kael had testified without flinching. The prosecution's star witness. The man who'd decided burning down the system was preferable to being consumed by it. After the testimony concluded, Elara waited outside the courthouse. Kael emerged surrounded by marshals who'd been assigned as security. There'd been 3 credible death threats in the last month. Someone had tried to poison his food in the detention center where he was being held. Another attempt had been made to run down his transport vehicle. Kael was the most valuable and most vulnerable witness in Seoul's legal history. Walk with me, he said when he reached her. They moved through the courthouse gardens, marshals maintaining a discreet distance. It was the closest thing to privacy they'd had in months. How are you doing? Elara asked. Tired, ready for this to be over. Kael's hands were in his pockets, shoulders tight with exhaustion. 3 more trials, then sentencing. Sunmi thinks you'll get the minimum, 5 years, maybe less. I destroyed lives, enabled criminal operations, corrupted government officials. I should get more than 5 years. You're also taking down a system that's operated for decades. That counts for something. Kael stopped walking, turning to face her. Does it? Because most nights I lie awake wondering if I'm just trading one form of corruption for another. Becoming a government informant to save my own skin. You're not saving your skin. You're accepting consequences while trying to prevent others from making the same mistakes. That's generous. It's true. They stood in the garden while autumn leaves fell around them. 3 months ago, Kael had controlled an empire, had power that made politicians nervous and rivals careful. Now he wore standard-issue clothing and lived in a cell and only saw daylight during court appearances. I heard you took a job,
Kael said. Elara had wondered when he'd bring this up. Yeah, small nonprofit, helping people navigate the legal system. Turns out 4 years of managing your empire gave me skills that translate. You hate nonprofits. You told me once they were inefficient and frustrating. I was wrong. They're actually... Elara searched for the right word. Good. They help people who need it. No ulterior motives. No strategic calculations. Just genuine assistance. Sounds boring.
It's better than boring. It's honest. She caught his hand. Something I learned from watching you these last few months. Honesty might not be profitable, but it lets you sleep at night. Kael's expression softened. You're better than me. You know that, right? I'm not better. I'm just trying to figure out who I am when I'm not managing your chaos. And who are you?
I don't know yet. Still figuring it out. Elara squeezed his hand. But I know I'm someone who visits her fiancé in detention and sits through endless trials and waits however long it takes for him to come home. 5 years minimum. I can wait 5 years. That's a long time. I know. You could find someone else, someone who's not facing prison time, someone who can actually give you a normal life. Kael Min, if you suggest I leave you one more time, I'm going to start bringing up embarrassing stories from your past during your testimonies. I have 4 years of material. Don't test me. That surprised a laugh out of him. Actual, genuine laughter. The marshals looked over nervously like they weren't sure if they should be concerned. I missed you, Kael said. I'm right here. You know what I mean. Not just physically. I missed us. The way we used to work together. The way you'd argue with me when I was being stupid. You're still being stupid. I'm still arguing. Nothing's changed except the location. Everything's changed. The important stuff hasn't. Elara moved closer, ignoring the marshals watching. I still love you. You still love me. That's what matters. Time's up, one of the marshals called. We need to get him back.
Kael kissed her quickly. I'll call tonight. You better. She watched them lead him away, back to the armored transport, back to the detention center, back to the small cell where he spent 22 hours a day preparing for the next trial. And she thought about what Sunmi had said 3 months ago, about how this would be a long process, about how they needed to live their lives while the legal system ground forward. Elara was trying, working at the nonprofit, rebuilding her own identity separate from Kael's empire, learning who she was when she wasn't managing crises or negotiating with dangerous people. But every night, she fell asleep wearing his ring and counting down the days until he came home, however long that took. The final trial concluded on a gray December afternoon 18 months after the warehouse confrontation. Kael had testified in 14 separate cases. His cooperation had led to 63 convictions. The entire network of corruption he'd operated within had been systematically dismantled. Now came his own sentencing. Elara sat in the front row of the courtroom, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Beside her sat Mina, her former assistant who'd kept in touch despite everything. 2 rows back was Serafina, who'd flown in from Singapore where she'd rebuilt her family's operations far from Seoul's toxic political climate. The courtroom was packed. Media, prosecutors, victims of the various operations Kael had facilitated, people whose lives had been destroyed by the system he'd helped maintain. And Kael, standing before the judge in standard prison clothing, looking thinner and older than he had 2 years ago, but somehow more at peace. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair and an expression that gave nothing away, reviewed the case file for what felt like hours. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Min, you have been convicted of conspiracy, money laundering, facilitating illegal operations, and numerous other charges. Under normal circumstances, these charges would result in a sentence of 15 to 20 years minimum. Elara's fingernails bit into her palms. However, the judge continued, your cooperation with prosecutors has been extraordinary. You have provided testimony that has resulted in the conviction of 63 individuals. You have exposed corruption at the highest levels of government and business. You have done more to dismantle organized crime networks in Seoul than any investigation in the last 3 decades. She paused, looking at Kael directly. The question before this court is whether that cooperation outweighs the severity of your crimes. Whether redemption is possible for someone who enabled so much harm. Whether justice is served by leniency or by the full weight of punishment. The courtroom held its breath. After careful consideration, taking into account your cooperation, the testimony of character witnesses, and the unique circumstances of this case, I am sentencing you to 6 years in prison with possibility of parole after 4. The courtroom erupted. Elara heard Serafina exhale sharply behind her, heard the media scrambling to report the sentence. 6 years. Not 5. Not the minimum. But not 15 either. 4 years before parole eligibility. 4 more years. Additionally, the judge said, voice cutting through the noise, you will be required to continue cooperation with ongoing investigations. Any refusal to testify or provide information will result in immediate revocation of parole eligibility. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Kael said. Do you have anything to say before this court? Kael was quiet for a moment. Then, I spent 10 years building an empire on corruption and violence. I told myself it was necessary, strategic, the only way to survive in a world designed to destroy people like me. And I was wrong. Not about the world being dangerous, it is, but about the necessity of becoming what I fought against. He looked at Elara. Someone once told me that the only way forward is through the fire. I'm grateful to have the chance to walk through it and come out the other side as something better than what I was. The judge nodded. Then I hope you use these years to become that better person. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Elara sat frozen as marshals moved to escort Kael out. He managed to catch her eyes one more time, mouthing words she couldn't hear over the courtroom noise but understood anyway. I love you. She mouthed it back. Then he was gone, and she was left sitting in the courthouse trying to process what 4 more years meant. Serafina appeared beside her. You okay?
No, but I will be. 4 years goes faster than you think. Does it? No, Serafina admitted. It's going to feel like forever, but you'll survive it. You're stronger than you realize. Elara looked at the woman who'd once been engaged to Kael, who'd threatened her, who'd somehow become an unlikely ally through all of this. Why did you come?
Because despite everything, I care about what happens to him. And to you. Serafina adjusted her designer bag. I'm building something new in Singapore, completely legitimate. No shadow operations, no corruption, just clean business. It's boring as hell, but I sleep better at night. Good for you. I mean it. If you ever want out of Seoul, if you need a fresh start somewhere, call me. I could use someone with your talents. I'm not leaving while he's in prison. I figured. But the offer stands. Serafina touched her arm briefly. Take care of yourself, Elara. You've been taking care of everyone else for years. Time to prioritize your own life. She left before Elara could respond. Mina approached nervously. Ms. Vale? Do you need anything? A time machine. Barring that, probably just some space. Of course, I'll be around if you change your mind. Elara sat alone in the emptying courtroom until security asked her to leave. Then she walked out into the cold December afternoon and tried to figure out what the next 4 years of her life would look like. Year 1 was the hardest. Elara visited Kael every week, sitting across from him in the visitation room, talking about everything and nothing. Her work at the nonprofit, his continuing testimony in peripheral cases, the small details of daily life that seemed simultaneously important and meaningless. He looked different in prison, harder in some ways, softer in others. The dangerous edge he'd always carried had been worn down by routine and reflection. I'm writing, he told her during one visit 6 months into his sentence. Writing what? A memoir, maybe? Or just documentation? Everything I did, why I did it, how the systems work? Anthropology from the inside. He smiled slightly. My lawyer thinks it could be useful. Show genuine remorse and understanding. Is that why you're writing it? For the parole board? No. I'm writing it because for the first time in my life, I have time to actually think about what I've done, who I became, whether any of it was worth it. He looked at her through the glass partition. Spoiler alert, most of it wasn't. Some of it was. Like what? Like me, us, whatever this is. You think meeting me was worth all the rest of it? I think meeting you was the only part that actually mattered. Elara pressed her hand against the glass. Everything else was just noise.
Kael mirrored her gesture on his side. 4 more years of this. Weekly visits through glass, phone calls on prison lines, letters that get read by guards before you receive them. You shouldn't have to live like this. And yet here I am, living like this, by choice. Stubborn. Learn from the best.
Year 1 crawled forward. Elara threw herself into work at the nonprofit, helping people navigate the legal system that had consumed so much of her life. She testified twice at trials where her knowledge of Kael's operations was relevant. She gave an interview to a journalist writing about the corruption cases. And every week she visited Kael and reminded herself why she was waiting. Year 2 brought unexpected changes. The nonprofit where Elara worked expanded, opening 2 new offices and hiring 20 additional staff. Elara was promoted to Director of Operations, overseeing programs that helped hundreds of people annually. It was strange being in charge after spending so many years as someone's assistant. Making decisions without checking with anyone. Building something that wasn't tied to criminal operations or shadow economies. You're good at this, Kael said during one visit. Running things. Leading people. I've had practice. No, I mean it. You were always good at managing my chaos. Now you're channeling that energy into something that actually helps people instead of just maintaining power structures. Are you proud of me or jealous?
Both, honestly. Elara laughed. Fair. Tell me more about the expansion. How are you funding it?
She spent the next 30 minutes walking him through budgets and grant applications and donor cultivation strategies. Watching his face light up with genuine interest as she explained nonprofit finance. This was the Kael most people never saw. The brilliant strategist who could have built legitimate empires if he'd chosen different paths. The man who understood systems and leverage and how to make organizations function efficiently. You should consult for us when you get out, Elara said. We could use someone with your strategic mind. Pretty sure nonprofits don't hire convicted criminals. Then we'll be the first. Kael smiled, actual warmth reaching his eyes for the first time in months. I'd like that. Year 2 also brought the first parole hearing. Not for Kael, he wouldn't be eligible until year 4, but for several people he'd testified against. People who'd taken plea deals and served shorter sentences. Elara attended some of the hearings, watched former crime bosses and corrupt officials try to convince parole boards they'd changed. Some seemed genuine. Others were clearly performing. It made her think about what Kael's eventual hearing would look like, whether the board would believe his transformation was real or just strategic, whether it mattered if the results were the same. Points. Year 3 brought crisis. One of the men Kael had testified against, a crime boss named Huang, who'd been convicted on racketeering charges, was released early for good behavior. Within a month, he'd been linked to 3 unsolved murders. Within 2 months, someone tried to kill Kael in prison. The attack happened in the yard during recreation time. 2 inmates with shanks, moving fast, clearly coordinated. Kael had fought back hard enough to survive until guards intervened, but he'd been hospitalized with serious injuries. Elara received the call at 2 a.m. She arrived at the prison medical facility to find Kael in surgery, outcome uncertain. Sunmi met her in the waiting room. They're saying he'll survive, punctured lung, severe lacerations, but he should recover. Who arranged it? We don't know yet. Could be Huang. Could be someone else Kael testified against. Could be someone trying to send a message to other potential witnesses. Can you protect him? We're moving him to solitary, maximum security. He'll be isolated for the remainder of his sentence. That's basically torture. It's alive. Sunmi's expression was grim. The alternative is letting him stay in general population and hoping the next attack fails too. Elara sank into a waiting room chair, head in her hands. 4 years ago, she'd stood in Kael's office and handed him a resignation letter, thinking that was the hardest thing she'd ever do. She'd been so naive. Kael emerged from surgery 12 hours later, heavily sedated but stable. They let Elara see him for 5 minutes through glass. He looked pale, vulnerable. Nothing like the dangerous man who'd controlled half of Seoul's shadow economy. Hey, she said through the intercom. His eyes opened slowly. Hey, you scared me. Sorry. Don't apologize, just survive. Trying. They moved him to solitary 2 days later. Elara's visits were reduced to once a month through additional security protocols. Phone calls became shorter and less frequent. Letters took longer to be processed and delivered. It was like losing him all over again, except worse because now he was isolated in a cell 23 hours a day with nothing but his own thoughts and the constant fear that someone would find another way to kill him. "I can't do this," Elara told Serafina during a rare phone call 3 months after the attack. Watching him slowly disappear into that system, knowing he's alone and scared, and there's nothing I can do. "But you are doing something," Serafina said gently. "You're giving him a reason to survive, a future to fight for. That's not nothing." "It feels like nothing." "Then feel that way. But keep visiting, keep writing, keep reminding him that someone's waiting on the other side of this." Elara did, even when visits were reduced, even when letters came back heavily redacted by prison censors, even when Kael's voice on the phone sounded hollow and defeated. She kept showing up, because 4 years ago he'd asked her to stay, and she'd promised she would, no matter how long it took. But year 4 arrived with unexpected grace. Kael's parole hearing was scheduled for early spring. By then, he'd spent 18 months in solitary confinement. The attack investigation had resulted in 3 convictions and Huang being returned to maximum security prison. Kael had continued cooperating with investigations from his isolated cell, had completed his memoir and donated all proceeds to victims of the operations he'd facilitated, had participated in prison rehabilitation programs and education initiatives. He'd done everything the system asked and more. The parole hearing took place on a cold March morning. Elara sat in the viewing gallery watching Kael answer questions from the board with the careful precision she remembered from interrogations years ago. "Mr. Min," one board member said, "you've expressed remorse for your crimes. But can you explain specifically what you understand now that you didn't understand then?" Kael was quiet for a moment. "I understood power, strategy, survival. What I didn't understand was that survival at the cost of your humanity isn't really survival. It's just slow death by different means." "And now?" "Now I understand that the systems I operated within, the corruption, the violence, the constant calculation, those systems don't actually protect you. They consume you, turn you into something unrecognizable. I spent 10 years becoming dangerous because I thought that's what safety looked like. I was wrong." "What would you do differently?" "Everything." Kael's voice was steady. "I would choose legitimate paths, build things that help instead of harm. Use my skills for construction instead of destruction. But mostly, I'd choose to be someone my father would be proud of instead of someone he'd be terrified by." The hearing lasted 3 hours. Character witnesses testified. Prosecutors argued both for and against parole. Victims spoke about the harm Kael's operations had caused. And through it all, Kael sat quietly accepting responsibility without making excuses. The board deliberated for 2 weeks. When the decision came, Elara was at work. The call arrived mid-afternoon, Sunmi's voice tight with emotion. "He got it. Parole approved. He'll be released in 30 days. Elara sat down hard in her office chair. 30 days? Pending completion of transition programming and parole conditions. But yes, he's coming home. 4 years. Minus 1 month. He'd survived attacks, isolation, the complete dismantling of everything he'd built. And now he was coming home. Elara looked at the ring on her finger, the one she'd worn every day for 4 years, the symbol of a promise made in a hospital room when everything was collapsing. "Thank you for calling," she managed. "Elara, you okay?" "I don't know yet, but I will be." She spent the rest of the day in a daze, telling her staff she was taking time off, calling Serafina with the news, making plans for what came next. 30 days felt simultaneously like forever, and not nearly enough time. Moag. Kael's release date fell on a Tuesday in April. Elara arrived at the prison 2 hours early and waited in the parking lot watching the sun rise over Seoul. 4 years ago, this city had been Kael's kingdom. Now it was just a city, full of people living their lives, mostly unaware of the battles fought and won and lost in courtrooms and prison cells. The prison doors opened at 8 a.m. Kael walked out wearing civilian clothes that hung slightly loose on his frame. He'd lost weight during 4 years inside. His hair was longer than he used to keep it. New scars marked his face from the attack in year 3, but his eyes were the same, steady, intelligent. focused on her with an intensity that made her chest ache. Elara met him halfway across the parking lot. They stood facing each other for a long moment. 4 years of weekly visits and phone calls and letters had kept them connected, but this, standing in the same physical space without glass or guards between them, felt impossible. "Hi," Kael said finally. "Hi. You waited. I promised I would. I wasn't sure you actually would." "I know." Elara closed the distance between them. "But I'm stubborn like that." Kael pulled her close, arms wrapping around her like he was trying to confirm she was real. "I missed you. The visits weren't enough. Phone calls weren't enough. Nothing was enough. I know." They stood there in the parking lot holding each other while the city woke up around them. 4 years of patience and endurance and stubbornness finally paying off in this single moment of reunion. "What happens now?" Kael asked eventually. "Now, we figure out what life looks like when you're not running an empire and I'm not managing your chaos." Sounds boring. It probably will be. We'll get jobs, pay taxes, argue about whose turn it is to do dishes. I've never done dishes in my life. Then you're going to learn. Kael laughed. Actual, genuine laughter. The sound was rusty from disuse, but beautiful in its honesty. "I have a lot of conditions," he said. "Parole requirements, regular check-ins, restrictions on who I can associate with, where I can go, what I can do. We'll figure it out. I can't go back to my old life." "Good. Your old life almost killed you. I don't know who I am without it. Then we'll figure that out too." Elara pulled back to look at his face. "Together, like we should have done years ago." "I love you," Kael said. Simple, direct, unguarded. "I love you too. We should probably get married at some point." "Probably? Like actually married, not just wearing the ring and waiting for someday." "Is this a proposal?" "It's an observation. I proposed 4 years ago. You said yes. We just haven't gotten around to the actual ceremony part." Elara smiled. "Then let's get around to it." They drove into Seoul together, leaving the prison behind. Kael stared out the window at a city he barely recognized after 4 years inside. New buildings, different traffic patterns. A world that had continued evolving without him. "It's strange," he said, "seeing all this. Knowing I used to control pieces of it, and now I'm just nobody." "You're not nobody. You're someone starting over. That's not the same thing. It's better." They stopped at Elara's apartment, the same one she'd lived in for years, small and practical and nothing like Kael's former penthouse. He looked around at the cramped space with something like wonder. "You lived here the whole time I was inside?" "Yes. I always imagined you somewhere bigger, more comfortable." "This was comfortable enough." Elara set her keys on the counter. "Besides, I didn't need much space, just somewhere to sleep between visits and work." Kael moved through the small apartment, touching things carefully like he was trying to memorize the space. He stopped at a wall covered in photos. Pictures of them from before everything collapsed. Printouts of letters he'd written from prison. The newspaper headline announcing Park's conviction. "You kept all this," he said quietly. "Of course I did." "Why?" "Because even when everything else fell apart, this mattered. You mattered." Kael turned to face her. 4 years ago, he'd been the most dangerous man in Seoul. Now he stood in a tiny apartment looking lost and vulnerable and completely human. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Live normally, be a regular person. I've spent my entire adult life operating in shadows and violence. I don't have skills for anything else. You have strategic thinking, problem solving, leadership, resource management." Elara moved closer. "You use those skills to build a criminal empire. Now you use them to build something legitimate." "Like what?" "Whatever we want. We have a lot of years ahead of us. Time to figure it out." The wedding happened 6 months later in a small courthouse ceremony. No elaborate celebration, no 100 guests. Just Sunmi as their lawyer and witness, Mina representing Elara's small circle of friends, and Serafina who flew in from Singapore to stand beside them. Kael wore a simple black suit purchased with money from his memoir proceeds. Elara wore a dress that wasn't quite white, more like cream, because starting fresh didn't erase the past. It just meant moving forward despite it. The judge, the same one who'd sentenced Kael 4 years ago, performed the ceremony with what might have been approval in her expression. Do you, Kael Min, take Elara Vale to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Elara Vale, take Kael Min to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Then by the power vested in me by the Republic of Korea, I pronounce you married. You may kiss. Kael cupped Elara's face gently and kissed her like they had all the time in the world instead of stolen moments between parole check-ins and obligations. When they pulled apart, Serafina was crying, actual tears streaking down her perfectly made-up face. Sorry, she said, wiping her eyes. This is just... I'm happy for you. Both of you. Thank you for coming, Elara said. Wouldn't have missed it. Serafina hugged them both. Build something beautiful. You've earned it. The small group went to dinner at a modest restaurant. Nothing fancy, just good food and better company, and the sense that despite everything, despite years of violence and corruption and prison and loss, something genuinely good had managed to survive. Kael held Elara's hand under the table, thumb tracing the wedding band now joining her engagement ring. We did it, he said quietly. Did what? Survived. Got married. Started over. All the things that seemed impossible 5 years ago. Still seems a little impossible. Good impossible, though. Yeah, Elara agreed. Good impossible. 2 years after Kael's release, they opened a consulting firm. It was Elara's idea initially. Use Kael's strategic mind and her operational expertise to help legitimate businesses solve complex problems. They focused on companies trying to clean up their operations, remove corruption, establish better governance structures. Essentially, they helped organizations avoid becoming what Kael had been. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. You're basically doing penance through consulting, Serafina observed during a video call from Singapore. Is that a bad thing? Kael asked. No, it's actually brilliant. Using your knowledge of how corrupt systems operate to help people dismantle them. Very full circle. The firm grew slowly but steadily. They took on challenging clients, companies with entrenched problems, organizations struggling with internal corruption, businesses trying to transition from gray market operations to legitimate practices. It was difficult work, often frustrating, sometimes dangerous when they exposed problems that powerful people wanted hidden. But it was honest. Every night, Kael came home to their modest apartment and told Elara about the day's challenges. Every night, they worked through problems together, built strategies, solved puzzles, like they'd always done, except now the stakes were corporate compliance instead of survival. You're good at this, Elara told him one evening after a particularly successful negotiation with a client. At what? Being legitimate, using your skills for something constructive. Kael was quiet for a moment. My parole officer said something similar at my last check-in, that I'd managed to rebuild my life in ways most ex-convicts never do. You sound surprised. I am surprised. 4 years ago, sitting in solitary confinement, I didn't think there was anything after prison. I thought I'd get out and just exist. Maybe work some menial job, stay out of trouble, die quietly. That's depressing. It was realistic. Most people who go through what I went through don't get second chances. Most people who go through what you went through don't have someone stubborn enough to wait for them. Elara kissed him softly. You're not most people. Neither are you. They stood in their kitchen, really Elara's kitchen that had become theirs over 2 years of shared meals and domestic routines, and Kael realized something he'd never quite believed before. He was happy. Not the dangerous, thrilling happiness of power and control, not the temporary satisfaction of winning negotiations or destroying enemies, but the quiet, steady happiness of building something real with someone who knew all his worst parts and loved him anyway. Thank you, he said. For what? For not giving up on me. For waiting through 4 years of prison and isolation. For believing I could be something other than what I was. You're welcome. But also, I didn't do it alone. You chose to change. You did the work. I just reminded you why it was worth it. We're a good team. Yeah, we are. But 5 years after Kael's release, they received an unexpected invitation. Detective Yoon, now promoted to superintendent, invited them to speak at the police academy. A lecture on dismantling corrupt systems from the inside, learning from someone who'd built and then destroyed one of Seoul's most entrenched criminal networks. "This feels like a trap," Kael said when the invitation arrived. "It's an opportunity," Elara corrected, "to show people what transformation actually looks like." They stood before a classroom of young officers and explained how corruption operates, how systems become entrenched, how good people make compromised choices until they're too deep to escape, and how sometimes the only way out is burning everything down and starting over. "Do you regret it?" one young officer asked. "Everything you did before?" Kael didn't hesitate. "Yes, every day. I hurt people, enabled crime, corrupted institutions. Those aren't things you stop regretting just because you served time." "Then why tell us about it?" "Because if my story stops even one of you from making the compromises I made, from thinking strategic corruption is acceptable, then maybe some of that harm gets balanced." Kael looked at the room full of young faces. "You're going to face choices, situations where bending rules seems easier, where looking away feels safer. And in those moments, I want you to remember what happens when you keep making those small compromises. You end up spending 4 years in prison wondering who you became and whether it was worth it." "Was it?" another officer asked. "Worth it, I mean. The empire I built? No. The power I accumulated? No. The fear I inspired? Definitely not." Kyle's hand found Elara's. "But surviving all that and coming out the other side as someone better? That might have been worth it." After the lecture, Superintendent Yoon walked them out. "Thank you for doing this," he said. "Not many people with your history would be willing to speak so honestly." "I owe the system," Kael said. "This is how I pay that debt." "You've already paid it. 4 years of testimony, 63 convictions, continued cooperation with ongoing cases. You've done more to clean up Seoul's corruption than anyone in law enforcement. Then consider this extra credit." Yoon smiled. "We'd like to bring you back. Make this a regular thing. Maybe develop a full curriculum about corruption and reform." "We'll think about it," Elara said. In the car on the way home, Kael was quiet for a long time. "You okay?" Elara asked. "I'm thinking about that question. Whether it was worth it, building everything just to destroy it. And? I don't know, the destruction was necessary. But I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I'd made different choices from the beginning, if I'd chosen legitimate paths instead of taking shortcuts. You'd be different. We'd be different. Maybe we never would have met. Would that have been better? Better for who? For you. You could have had a normal life, normal job, partner who didn't come with a criminal record, and parole conditions. I could have had boring, Elara corrected. Instead, I got interesting, difficult, complicated, but real. And I'll take real over easy any day." Kael pulled the car over, turning to face her. "How did you do it? Wait for me. Believe in me. Stay committed when everything was falling apart? The same way you survived 4 years in prison. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of choosing us over everything else." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have." Elara touched his face gently. "You asked me once why I loved you. Remember? In your office before everything exploded. And I couldn't answer because I didn't know how to explain loving someone who scared me and challenged me and made me want to be better all at the same time. And now I know. I love you because you're the only person who ever saw me as more than just competent, who pushed me to build something meaningful instead of just managing chaos, who chose to transform himself even when it would have been easier to stay dangerous." She kissed him softly. "You're infuriating and complicated, and you have terrible ideas about doing dishes. But you're mine, and I'm never letting go." 10 years after the warehouse confrontation, Kael stood in the same courthouse where he'd been sentenced and watched Park Ji-eun's final appeal get denied. She'd been in prison for a decade, would likely die there. "How do you feel?" Elara asked as they left the building. "I don't know. Vindicated? Sad? Relief that she can't hurt anyone else? All of those things?" "Yeah, all of those." They walked through Seoul's streets, a city that had transformed dramatically in 10 years. New leadership, reformed systems, the corruption networks that had operated for generations mostly dismantled. Not perfect, never perfect, but better. I never apologized, Kael said suddenly. For what? For dragging you into my world, for making you part of all that darkness, for asking you to wait 4 years while I paid for my mistakes. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to stay. You shouldn't have had to choose. But I did. And I chose you. Stop apologizing for it. They stopped at a park overlooking the Han River, the same park where 10 years ago, Kael would have been planning operations and managing territories. Now he just watched the water flow and thought about how far they'd come. We did it, Elara said quietly. Did what? Built something good. Despite everything. Despite the violence and corruption and all the reasons we shouldn't have survived any of this, we built a life worth living. Kael pulled her close. We did. Are you happy? Yeah, I am. Are you? More than I ever thought possible. They stood there watching the river and the city and the life they'd built from ruins. Neither of them were the same people who'd stood in that executive office 10 years ago, her handing him a resignation letter, him refusing to accept it. They'd been broken and rebuilt so many times. Prison and trials and threats and isolation. Years of distance and patience and stubborn refusal to give up. But they'd survived. Not just survived, they'd transformed, become better, built something real from the wreckage of everything they'd destroyed. You know what I think about sometimes? Kael said. What? That first night after the gala, when you told me you couldn't keep working for me. I tried so hard to convince you to stay, used every manipulation technique I knew, and you saw right through it. I was terrified. You didn't show it. Years of practice hiding my feelings around you. And now? Now I don't have to hide anything, Elara smiled. Most inconvenient thing you ever did, making me fall in love with you. The feeling's mutual. They walked home slowly, taking their time. No empire to manage, no crises to solve, no desperate measures to protect what couldn't be saved. Just two people who'd loved each other through impossible circumstances and somehow made it to the other side intact. In their apartment, Elara made dinner while Kael reviewed cases for the consulting firm. Domestic routines that would have seemed absurd 10 years ago. The dangerous kingpin and his executive assistant cooking meals and discussing business strategies that helped instead of harmed. Later, lying in bed, Kael said, "If you could go back, change how things happened, would you?" Elara thought about it, about the warehouse and the trials and the 4 years of visiting prison, about the fear and pain and endless waiting. "No," she said finally, "I wouldn't change anything. Not even the hard parts? Especially not the hard parts. They made us who we are now, and who we are now is pretty damn good." Kael kissed her forehead. "I love you. I love you too." They fell asleep tangled together, the ring Kael had bought 6 months into their relationship still on Elara's finger. Beside it now, a wedding band earned through years of patience and transformation. Outside, Seoul continued its endless evolution, a city that had seen empires rise and fall, that had watched dangerous men become better and corrupt systems collapse under their own weight. The story of Kael Min and Elara Vale would eventually be forgotten by most people, become a footnote in Seoul's history, a cautionary tale about corruption and redemption told in police academies. But for them, it wasn't a cautionary tale. It was their life, hard-won, honestly earned, built from ruins and patience and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other even when everything else fell apart. And in the morning, they'd wake up and keep building. One ordinary day at a time, one honest choice at a time. Together. Always together. The way it should have been from the beginning.